followed by a roll call of those in attendance. This is usually followed by questions and answers to questions, statements by ministers, items under public business, and private members' motions. But before we begin, let's try a parliamentary trivia question. The Jamaican Parliament is unicameral. Is this true or false? Get the answer at the end of this introduction to the lower house. On this session's agenda under public business, Minister of Tourism and leader of the House, Edmund Bartlett, is down to commence the sectoral debate. Every year, following the budget debate, the House of Representatives, the lower house, engages in another round of presentations known as the sectoral debates. Time is allotted for 2 sittings per week over a 6-week period following the close of the budget debate, conducted at the start of the new fiscal year in April. Based on the standing orders, rules governing the Houses of Parliament, members are entitled to speak during these debates are any minister and any member of the opposition selected by the leader of the opposition. During his presentation, one can expect the tourism minister to speak about whether or not Jamaica is well on its way to achieving its 2023 projections of total visitor arrivals, preliminary data on stopover arrivals as well. We can hear more about the planned destination assurance framework and strategy. Destination assurance is seen by Minister Bartlett as a key to the future of Jamaica's tourism success. He describes it as a blueprint that will guide the ministry and their partners to ensure continuous improvement in the delivery and management of quality throughout the tourism value chain. Member of Parliament for St. Andrew Western, Mr. George A. Hylton, is down to continue the sectoral debate. It should be noted that the agenda can be adjusted with items being added, removed, or replaced. If you are planning to attend a session, here are some rules to keep in mind. No visitor shall create any act of disorder within the precincts of the House. No photography, videography, or sketching of the proceedings is allowed unless so authorized by the presiding officer. Visitors who remain within the precincts of the House during a suspension of the session are asked to keep silent. Speaking of rules, did you know that standing orders are the permanent written rules under which the House regulates its proceedings? The continuing or standing nature of rules means that they do not lapse at the end of a session or Parliament. Rather, they remain in effect until the House itself decides to suspend, change, or repeal them. Can you think of an example? Here's an interesting one. The Speaker's rulings are ordinarily respected and abided by all members of the House in Parliament. According to the standing order, however, where the Speaker is in error on the point of law, as opposed to an error in the exercise of judgment on a matter of discretion accorded to the Speaker, it is the duty of the parliamentary opposition to seek to have the ruling changed or comport with the applicable law. It's almost time to go to the main event, but before that, let's get the answer to our trivia question. We stated, the Jamaican Parliament is unicameral. Is this true or false? It's false. The Jamaican Parliament is bicameral. This means that it consists of 2 houses, the Senate, also called the Upper House, and the House of Representatives, also known as the Lower House. The members of the House of Representatives are elected under universal adult suffrage with a maximum of 5 years between elections. Now, over to the proceedings.
Mrs. Nita Garvey. Here. Mr. Miller. Mrs. Nita Garvey. Here. Mr. Paulwell. Present. Mr. Phillips. Dr. Phillips. Mr. Robertson, Mr. Robinson, Mr. Siblist, Mr. Slowly, Mrs. Vaz, Dr. Wheatley, Mr. Williams, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Wright, Dr. Clark,
Members, once again, it is indeed my pleasure to welcome everyone who is here joining us for the sitting of Parliament this afternoon, and also the commencement of the sectoral debate. Members, I don't wish to compete with your voices, please. I want to extend a very special welcome this afternoon to persons here from the Diplomatic Corps, students from the Mona High School, I gather with us, and all specially invited guests of the Minister of Tourism, who is here to open the sectoral debate. And we have quite a wonderful display outside, and Western St. Andrew. And, hold a minute, he was indeed leader of government business who operated and dealt with the position very well. So the sectoral debate this afternoon is opened by our Minister of Tourism and House Leader. And also speaking this afternoon is the member from Western St. Andrew. And all his guests who are invited as well, we are delighted to have you this evening, and we trust we are going to have an excellent afternoon and with a lot of information that will serve us well. House Leader.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to join you in welcoming the many guests that we have here today, especially, of course, those from the tourism industry, but I'll make reference to them at a later point. Madam Speaker, I beg to move that the agenda be suspended to allow for public business to be taken first, so as to enable the commencement of the sectoral debate. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Members, the question before the House is that the items on our agenda be suspended and for us to move straight ahead to the item public business. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, today it is our intention to commence the sectoral debate.
Just a minute. Members, please, I'm going to ask you, when somebody rises to speak, I'm going to ask you to keep, I'm not saying we are to be in silence, but keep your voices soft so we don't hear it. And I'm also encouraging all of us with the sotto voce comments to make sure that they are just what they are and that the speaker doesn't hear them. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today it is our intention to commence a sectoral debate. The Minister of Tourism and House Leader will be our first speaker, and he will be followed by the Member of Parliament for St. Andrew Western.
Member, Minister of Tourism, House Leader, and the Member of Parliament for East Central St. James. I now invite you to open the sectoral debate with your presentation.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it is really an immense honor to address this distinguished House for the 34th time as an elected representative of the people of our beautiful country, Jamaica. I'm proud to be the longest-serving cabinet minister today. Yes. No. I was before. Madam Speaker, although it has been 43 years since I first got elected to this House, it still feels the same sense of pride and duty that I did when I stepped into these hallowed halls on that occasion. Madam Speaker, I take the opportunity to very seriously indicate to all this privilege, because it is a privilege. And it is a privilege given to so few of us, of all the people of our country, to serve the people of this great nation. Firstly, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to God for bestowing me with the health and strength required to discharge my duties with the utmost dedication and diligence. I'm grateful for His blessings, which has enabled me to carry out my responsibilities with some level of effectiveness. Additionally, I am honored to serve as Minister of Tourism and the leader of government business in this honorable House. These positions are a testament to the trust and confidence that my Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, has placed in me to serve my country in these critical roles. For this, Madam Speaker, I am deeply grateful, and I pledge to continue working tirelessly to uphold the confidence my leader and fellow Jamaicans have placed in me. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to you, Madam Speaker, for your unwavering commitment to steering the parliamentary affairs of our nation with such exceptional skill and dedication and assiduity to purpose. I also want to express my gratitude to the clerk and the diligent staff of this honorable House, who have played an invaluable role in ensuring the smooth functioning of our legislative process. Madam Speaker, I cannot overestimate my immense gratitude to my dear wife of 50 years, Conrad, and my son, my daughter-in-law, and my grandchildren, who have been my constant source of strength and support throughout the years. I'm truly blessed to have such a loving and caring family who have always been the wind beneath my wings. I would also like to extend special thanks to my staff at the Ministry of Tourism, including my personal team members. And several of them are here, and we'll make reference to them a little bit from now, as well as my driver and my security details, whose unwavering commitment and hard work have been instrumental in enabling me to carry out my duties with utmost efficiency. And I want to pause also to give special commendation to someone who is a little more than a staff, because he's perhaps my alter ego as well as my man Friday, and he's the man who gets things done, especially when I'm not here, Delano Seafright. Madam Speaker, I also want to express my appreciation to my esteemed colleagues in government, my cabinet colleagues, especially those who work tirelessly to impact the tourism sector directly. I'm truly grateful for their hard work and dedication, which have significantly contributed to the growth and success of this vital industry. Permit me also, Madam Speaker, to say thanks to my colleague members of Parliament, all together who have worked in the best interest of Jamaica, even when we have difference of views, especially on the other side. But the common thread that runs between us all is that deep and abiding commitment to the people of Jamaica and to serve them with utmost dedication and sincerity. And I want to thank you. I must also use the opportunity to pay special respect to the opposition spokesperson on tourism, Senator Janice Allen, and thank her for her conscientious engagements with the task assigned to her. Madam Speaker, the sector has been experiencing great success due in no small part to the diligent work of our tourism industry partners and the industrious efforts of the team I have the pleasure and the honor of leading. Madam Speaker, I must express my sincere gratitude to my permanent secretary, who I believe is perhaps permanent now. She's been an abiding partner over the years, the 11 years that I've been Minister of Tourism. Permanent Secretary Jennifer Griffith has been my permanent secretary. I want to especially thank the chairpersons of the respective public bodies within the ministry, their board members, their executive directors, and the amazing employees of all the bodies within my ministry. Madam Speaker, I want to especially thank the Jamaica Hotel and Tourist Association, its president, Mr. Robin Russell, who is here today. And I would like also to enjoin the former president, Mr. Clifton Reeder, who is also here and who is celebrating his 49th year as a worker in the tourism industry. And I want especially to comment. Madam Speaker, whilst we're doing that, the team that I call the Dream Team. Yes. Madam Speaker, I know the protocol suggests...
I crave your indulgence. Members, like the Speaker, those of us sitting in the gallery, cannot and ought not to join in the clapping. We leave that for the members of Parliament sitting on the benches.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I will ask your permission. I will ask your permission to allow for the Dream Team, Madam Speaker, that I call the Protean Tourism Recovery Task Force, that has taken us from 0 in 2020 to now 120% ahead of 2019, to just stand so that we can recognize them in this honorable house for the work that they have done over the period. And they are here today, Madam Speaker, the Dream Team. These are the persons, Madam Speaker, who, along with others, many others, they're merely the representation of the many others across Jamaica who have put their shoulders to the wheels and have put their heads where we wouldn't even go to ensure that the recovery happened, and we'll be able to talk about that recovery a little later on today. Finally, Madam Speaker, and indeed of most importance in all of my arrangements today, I want to make a special thank you to my constituents, East Central St. James, and the councillors who are here, and my office staff who are here. And that staff has been with me for the better part of 20 years. Madam Speaker, I again ask your permission for them just to stand, my staff from my office in Montego Bay. We have an office there that we've had for 20 years. And my councillors. And I want to thank them. I want to thank them, Madam Speaker.
Members, please, members sitting in the gallery, it is important that we do not participate in what is taking place.
Madam Speaker, I apologize for their exuberance, but I understand the emotion.
I know the pride is
and
overwhelmed.
I equally appreciate the concern of the House Leader Emeritus. Madam Speaker, the constituency of East Central St. James has grown, developed, and we have really developed around the business of building human capital. And whilst in my closing later on in the debate, Madam Speaker, I will speak more about the constituency and our performance, I would just like to indicate how much I appreciate the team that has worked with us to build the educational trust within that constituency. And for last year alone, Madam Speaker, we spent $13 million in providing scholarships and support to hundreds of children, young people across not just Jamaica, but the world. And I'm proud of that program. And in the case of East Central St. James, it's 25 years old now. And over the years, we've had graduates in every single discipline that you can imagine. And every university in Jamaica today, every community college, and most high schools have students from the program. Every teacher's college has students from the program. And we have students in China. We have students now doing masters in linguistics in Madrid. We have them in London. We have them in the United States of America and in Canada. And one of the joys of my life is as I go to do the duties of government in cities after cities, there are graduates from my program who come to meet me and to show their appreciation for the work that they've done there. And this means a lot to me. And I'd like to just to indicate, Madam Speaker, that over the years we spent a lot of time, as I indicate, on primary, secondary, and tertiary education. This time, Madam Speaker, starting this year, we are going to not change our tack, but to go to another dimension in the education program for the constituency. And we are going to be breaking ground next month for the first ever Early Childhood Development Center for Innovation. And our Prime Minister came and he was a guest speaker at the function where we started the fundraising activities for it. And I'm proud to tell you that we have support from almost every walk of life towards the development of this innovation center, because it is going to be a game changer. Children 2 years to 5. That's the level that we start. And it will be an activation center, not the traditional classroom with chalk and blackboard. Every child will have a tablet. And we will have a space for parents to also come and to interact. The whole idea of starting the children at that age, Madam Speaker, is to recognize that the child is wired to learn. And the neurons in the brain multiply and are numerous during that period of time. And they die as we get older. And so the capacity to learn is the greatest during that period. We want to capture it. But we want to do something more. We want to go at both sides of the brain. So the program at the center will be in relation to the arts and to music, as well as to science and technology. And the whole idea is to enable these young children at the very tender age to not only develop ideas, but to be able to start converting ideas into practical and meaningful activities and action. And the whole idea, of course, is to create a new generation of innovativeness. And the emphasis is going to be on children whose parents are not of the economic means to allow them to enter any kind of institution of that kind. And I wouldn't want to tell you what happened in the first little effort at it, but I'm satisfied that the support for this center is there. It's going to cost us $1.5 million to complete it and to have it ready, and the timetable is for September 2024. US, 1.5 years. So, Madam Speaker, if ever there was an industry that has the potential to transform our nation, our communities, and the lives and livelihood of the Jamaican people for better, it is tourism. Tourism, Madam Speaker, is resilience and its ability to rally from lengthy downturns, as we saw with COVID-19, that induced standstill, as we call it, what some people call the entrepause, when the whole world literally was at a standstill and doing nothing. But it was more than that. It was also, Madam Speaker, a period of great uncertainty. when the world was trying to understand what was happening. And the whole process of trying to find a way became a highly iterative one, where it was all about trial and error. And for the first time, nobody had the full answer, and everybody was dependent on everybody else to find a way. And perhaps it brought the period, perhaps the only period in Anthropocene Earth when man really became truly interdependent and relied on each other to find their way. So allow me, Madam Speaker, to give a detail of the contribution of the tourism industry to Jamaica in the period. Madam Speaker, 2022 was a good year. Not only did tourism rebound at a record rate, but the tourism industry has been the driving force behind the post-pandemic economic recovery of the entire nation. Data from the Planning Institute of Jamaica, PIOJ, makes this abundantly clear. And Madam Speaker, I'm quoting now from the PIOJ's report in relation to the performance of January to December 22, when it reported that the gross domestic product increased by 5.1% compared to 2021. And this reflected an increase in real value added for the goods producing industry by 2.1%, and the service industry, which tourism is a part of, by 6% for the period. For 2022, Madam Speaker, the estimated growth in real value added for the hotel and restaurants industry, which is what tourism is defined as, was 48.9% compared to 2021. This feat, Madam Speaker, is even more remarkable when we consider that in 2021, the industry had just begun its recovery from the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. The industry sector, Madam Speaker, contributed to the growth in the overall economy of the industries, such as agriculture, forestry, fisheries, which, Madam Speaker, contributed an estimated 9%. And one can be clear in indicating that much of that was, of course, induced by the recovery of tourism because of the demand that it brought for goods and services to be consumed by the visitors who come to the country. In 2022, Madam Speaker, we welcome 3.3 million visitors, a 117% increase over 2020. Madam Speaker, this estimated foreign exchange earnings was $3.7 billion, and it represented a 71.4% increase over 2021. Madam Speaker, but the better news in this regard is when we look at pre-COVID performance and what the numbers are at this time. And the 2019 figures, Madam Speaker, for the arrivals was 2.6 million, and we were able to find pretty close to 3 million arrivals, 3.3 million arrivals in 2022. Madam Speaker, the estimates for full recovery that we had for 2024, we projected that we would have $3.8 billion in revenue. The actual performance, Madam Speaker, is $4.1 billion. So, Madam Speaker, we are now projecting for 23, and I'm very pleased to indicate that the first quarter, and in fact, this is the biggest and best winter season that Jamaica has ever had in the history of tourism. We brought in 1.185, nearly 1.2 million visitors. And that's 94.4% higher than last year. And we brought in the process $1.12 billion US dollars, which is 46.4% increase over last year. But Madam Speaker, the hard cold facts are that beyond the arrivals and the revenues that we speak about, people ask the question, so where is the revenue flowing to? And who gets the benefit of it? And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on as we show you, Madam Speaker, that never before in the history of Jamaica has tourism made such a contribution to the Jamaican economy, and we are willing to continue that process and to make even greater contributions. And I'll give you a sense of this. In 2022, January to December, the revenues to the Minister of Finance's coffers. And you recall that he made very heavy weather of that in his own presentation. That $11.75 billion was paid over to the Consult Fund from the GART. You know what the GART is? That is the guest accommodation room tax. And the general consumption tax. Yes, that is for everybody. But 11 of that, 6 come directly, exactly. So, Madam Speaker, you know, that performance was almost double what it was in 2021, when it was $5 billion. And more importantly, Madam Speaker, it was 25% better than 2019, which was the best year in terms of our performance, when it was $9.4 billion. So, Madam Speaker, overall, during that 2022, January to December, from the Tourism Enhancement Fund collections, from the airport charges and the direct taxes, I haven't even included head tax yet, the travel tax. Tourism contributed a total here of 51.7 billion Jamaican dollars. Investments continue to move to drive the industry's recovery, Madam Speaker. Over the last 5 years, tourism investment contributed 20% of the island's total foreign direct investment. And over the next 5 to 10 years, there are multiple upcoming investment projects which will see an addition of 15 to 20,000 new rooms with investment of $4 to $5 billion US. Madam Speaker, the last fiscal year has seen my ministry, our public bodies, and our tourism partners continuing to build on the framework we put in place post-pandemic for a revitalized tourism product that is viable, equitable, and generates opportunities for all. Indeed, Madam Speaker, never before in the history of Jamaica has tourism made such a contribution to the Jamaican economy. And we are going to do even more. Madam Speaker, as the aforementioned data suggest, tourism will be the biggest driver of our economic growth and prosperity, not just for now, but indeed for years to come. Our vast economic reach is not always easily understood, Madam Speaker. It is also more than visitors, and we want to make that point, that tourism is much more than visitors arriving. It's more than airlift, it's more than multi-billion-dollar investment. That tourism really is a confluence of so many parts that have to come together, that touch so many lives, that causes prosperity to be generated on so many people from varying areas of life, different avocations, and also people of varying abilities and capabilities. One of the things that I say sometimes when I travel in the marketing world is that tourism is perhaps the only industry in the world where somebody could allow 2 little crabs to race and make a money. It's an amazing that it does not take a rocket scientist. Any average ordinary person who has an idea can convert that idea into some good, some material service, and makes a living from tourism. And that's the power of that industry. So, Madam Speaker, the confluence of hotel workers, farmers, craft vendors, tour operators, red cap porters, contract carriers operators, attraction workers, and I could go on and on and on. All these are the beneficiaries of tourism. And I say it again, never before in the history of Jamaica has tourism made such a great contribution to the economy of this country. So, Madam Speaker, tourism is enjoying the growth I mentioned. So while I will outline now how the tourism and its public bodies are making this happen, I want also for us to put in place an understanding of the kind of architecture that is going to now enhance the diverse tourism product with policies, programs, and initiatives that we are putting together to ensure that Jamaicans at all levels of society, and I make that point again, Jamaicans at all levels of society can enjoy a larger and bigger slice of the tourism pie. Madam Speaker, connecting small farmers directly. That's part of how we're going to do it. And in the next 2 minutes, I'll just quickly run through how we're doing it. Connecting small farmers directly with buyers within the industry, Madam Speaker. And we have done that to the tune of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. And just to let you know, through our agri-linkage network, Alex, we have provided 786 farmers with opportunities to sell their products to the tourism sector, and over $200 million of sales have been effected in the last 3 months of this year. Madam Speaker, I have further details on that because we have some of the farmers in the gallery as well. Yes? Some pineapple farmers and some strawberry farmers and some little. So one of the strawberry farmers, Madam Speaker, started out and at the first session we had, and then the last meeting we had with them at UTEC, he drove a BMW turning up to the place. So, never before in the history of Jamaica has tourism contributed so much to the economy. Madam Speaker, we are upskilling and certifying thousands of tourism workers as well as high school students. And Madam Speaker, through programs that we have established through the Jamaica Center for Tourism Innovation and our local international partners, the American Hotel and Lodging Institute, the American Culinary Foundation, and now we're talking to the Malaga University for Gastronomy and also the University in Austria for Gastronomy. We'll have more to say about that later on. Madam Speaker, last year alone, we certified over 3,000 candidates who were 94% successful in their certification program. But Madam Speaker, it's a little more than that, because the purpose of establishing the Jamaica Center for Tourism Innovation was in recognition that the workers of the industry, by and large, were competent and efficient, but not certified. And so, in the first 5 years of the program, we have certified over 10,000 workers of the tourism industry in various categories. And I'll have more to say about that a little later on. Madam Speaker, we are ensuring that the benefit flows through to the people of the country through the revolutionary tourism workers' pension plan. A plan which we know we started officially in 2022. And in less than a year, we have had 8,000 hospitality workers already paying in the scheme, and they have paid over $550 million in this scheme. So, Madam Speaker, when we put that together with the $1 billion that the government of Jamaica has put there, there's an endowment fund now, Minister of Finance, of $1,076 million that is now being invested in the economy. And so in the next 5 years, when the first cohorts of beneficiaries will come, that fund would have accreted to well over $10 billion. And then we'll begin to see the unfolding of a pool of funds that now is affordable, a stock of domestic savings, Minister, that will be there for investment so that we can have growth. The returns from which will stay in Jamaica because it is Jamaica savings and it is Jamaica capital. Madam Speaker, the workers of the industry have also recognized that there's need for a greater sense of social development that must attend them, and the government of Jamaica has moved in that direction. Housing for tourism workers has been a very important part of that strategy to ensure that we can spread more. And so in collaboration with our partners, Madam Speaker, we are looking at 2,500 houses that are currently being built and will be completed in the next 5 years for workers of the tourism industry. Now, Madam Speaker, that is not to conflate what currently is happening with the NHT program, where Estuary, for example, is doing 3,000 houses, of which the tourism workers in St. James and Hanover can benefit directly. Nor indeed, Madam Speaker, to speak of the Rhine Park Estates program, which has 784 units that are now being completed. But, Madam Speaker, to indicate that in addition, the NHT has a program for 1,286 units for Barrett Hall that is now to come on stream, and there are a number of other areas around Jamaica. But most importantly, Madam Speaker, the partners in tourism are saying, especially the new investors, and I'm very proud to say that today, in the discussions that I'm having, the first one, Hard Rock, 1,000 hotels, hotel workers' houses are projected for Grange Pen. Palladium, we were there last week with them. They have an investment expansion program to build 1,000 more rooms in Hanover, and they are building 650 houses at Point in Hanover for the workers of the industry. Princess, that is now finishing their first 1,000 rooms to start the 1st of January, are doing 500 dormitories for workers to be able to have accommodation in the air. So, Madam Speaker, what we're saying is that this government is not just talking about inclusion. This government is including the workers of the industry. Madam Speaker, a further innovation in this is that the Prime Minister's social housing program, we find a good model. We find a good model. And Madam Speaker, the JHTA and the Ministry, through the Tourism Enhancement Fund, are currently in discussion about how we can use the model. And I want us to listen to this because a lot of people feel that tourism is for big land and we're not doing anything for the little people. And what we are saying is that the JHTA and ourselves are now fine-tuning a model similar to the Prime Minister's social housing model, where we from the TEF will put $100 million and they will match it to make sure that we can have 20 houses for workers of the industry every year for the next 5 years. And this will be under the social housing model. So the workers won't have to pay for it. They are in a position of need. We know the need. We recognize the difficulty. And from their own companies, they will be selected. So no politics will be involved in it. Nobody will have to say, Minister did this or TEF did that. It will be that the companies, having regard to the quality of their workers and the state of the worker too, can enable small players to have this benefit of a house. Madam Speaker, talk about inclusive tourism. Last year, Madam Speaker, when we finished the program with the Exim Bank and Minister of Finance, I want you to take care of this one for me. Because we put $1 billion in the Exim Bank for the purpose of providing on-lending arrangements for the small and medium tourism enterprises. And Madam Speaker, I'm proud to tell you that Exim has already disbursed $1.89 billion to 293 beneficiaries under the program. Small hotelers, little guys that have a little attraction over here, little guy with a little 9-room and a 5-room and a little Airbnb, and they can come and borrow at the lowest interest rates at the time, 4.5%, over 5 years, $25 million maximum, and they can go and refurbish and fix up their little place so that they can be inserted properly in the value chain of tourism. But that's not enough. From the Jamaica National Small Business Arrangement, Madam Speaker, we put $70 million, another revolving program. My good news for you is that we have provided 437 loans to little taxi man, little Juta man, little Jekyll man, little Maxi Tour man. Okay? And $983 million have been provided for those people over the last few years. And during the pandemic, Madam Speaker, we were able to reduce the interest on that to 0% during the pandemic, so that they were able to operate and survive. And now that the recovery has hit, they are recovering well and talking about it. Madam Speaker, the Tourism Linkage Network, through our Christmas in July program and our speed networking program, have brought to the platform hundreds of local producers and entrepreneurs to engage with the hospitality sector and corporate Jamaica. Since 2016, Madam Speaker, small business owners have earned $653 million in participating with our tourism speed network. And I'm telling you, when some companies, little companies that have become medium-sized companies now, make me proud. And I know that Brescia will not hold it against us to mention it here, because they are proud of the fact that they are one of the beneficiaries of this program. And today, they are not only making traveling bags that are efficient and useful, but they tell me now they're going to put wheels on them so that they will become useful as larger facility for travel in the country. Madam Speaker, we are proud of these efforts. And I want to make you know that the argument about the beach, we understand. And we are there with you on that. As a result of which, the Tourism Enhancement Fund has been carrying out a strong program of beach development. Oh yes, Pagé is one of them. But we want to just say clearly that this year, Madam Speaker, we are committed to 3 major beach development. 3 this year. Yes, because it is not just to clean up the beach and put in a little bathroom here and there. It is to give you a decent, world-class facility that make all Jamaicans proud to use it and visitors alike. So, Madam Speaker, in keeping with the program that the Prime Minister has announced, and if you recall that we started it in a big way with the Harmony Park in Montego Bay, where we, along with the UDC, we provided $1 billion to assist in that process. And now, with the Prime Minister's program, Negril will be the next major park development like the Harmony Park in Montego Bay, and that will be coming this year. Madam Speaker, Spruce Up program has brought thousands of people, ordinary people all around. And members of Parliament here will tell you that this is the first program that has touched 63 constituencies every year for the last 5 years. Talk to me about everyone. Madam Speaker, for a small, Madam Speaker, and I think members are waiting to hear the next part of what So, Madam Speaker, nearly 300 communities in Jamaica have had small benefits that have made a difference. And my friend, the member from Southwest St. Andrew, has memories of this when we opened one such facility for her in her constituency. And yours is coming. Yes, yours is coming in a bigger way. And where's a member from Manchester Northwest? He isn't here today, but he has stories that he can tell. And every single member here has a story that you can tell in relation. But the good news is that because you've done so well with it, this year we'll increase it to 4 million to make sure that everybody has a plan. Madam Speaker, in addition, the Spruce Up program is going to take a new lease on life as the Destination Assurance Councils that we are establishing across the island will be taking a greater role in enabling improvement in the destinations. And so starting with Negril, again, Negril is being featured here. Where is the member from Western Westmoreland? And the good news here, Madam Speaker, is that the stakeholders in Negril are participating in this Spruce Up program. Because already we have commitment for over $2 million from stakeholders in Negril to add to what we have to put together to make sure that the program can start off on a good footing in Negril early in May this year. So, Madam Speaker, all in all, 350,000 Jamaicans are employed either directly with the hotels, through villas, attractions, restaurants, and banks, Madam Speaker, because the financial system depends, I think 30%, I am told, of the financial system is dependent on tourism activities and tourism flows. Madam Speaker, when I speak to the big manufacturers of Jamaica, they all say the same thing. And I'm not going to call all the names, but even one decided that he would give us a testimonial because when the tourism industry was down, their business was absolutely zero. And now that the industry is back, they are doing well again and expanding and doing much better. And one, of course, when he went to one hotel to sell water, and when the hotel told him what the demand was for water, just water, millions of bottles of water, he had to literally say to them, I'll come back to you and seek some partnership. That's the power of tourism, the most consumption-driven activity on planet Earth.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker. I know.
The Minister has about 1 minute and 30 seconds left for his presentation.
Madam Speaker, I now ask that the standing orders be suspended to enable the Minister to continue his speech to its conclusion, notwithstanding the time limit on speeches.
Members, the question before the House is that the Minister be given sufficient time to complete his presentation. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it, Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I will use the next 15 minutes to tidy up, Madam Speaker, because I think we've covered quite a bit of the grounds that we have. And I just wanted to indicate, Madam Speaker, that the recovery of which I spoke, Madam Speaker, has not been without some issues. And I think that it's very important that we speak about that at this time, Madam Speaker, because we need to ensure that the entire country is in sync with the need for us to have a recovery that is as smooth as possible, that is as linear as possible. We know the difficulties there, but we've had challenges. And first challenge, Madam Speaker, has been to maintain a sustainable supply of skilled labor for the sector. And we recognize that to be a global challenge. It's well known. And I myself have a role playing internationally in terms of looking at the whole labor market arrangements in tourism and how we can enable a return to full employment as we had in 2019 and then to go beyond that. So Jamaica has been impacted by this problem, and our local and foreign investment partners seek to employ local workers in their organization in a bid to realize the returns. The issue is therefore, Madam Speaker, one of skilled labor supply being appropriately aligned to a fully developed compensation strategy that is designed to attract and retain the best of our labor force. Achieving this type of harmony is a pathway to resolving a very crippling issue of the industry, which will only become worse as the expansion of the sector continues apace. We continue to make solid advancement in this area, Madam Speaker, in filling some of the gaps through private and public sector efforts. However, some of these issues persist, and innovative solutions will have to be found and fast-tracked. And I think that some of it we have been hearing about. Prime Minister has been mentioning it, Minister of Labour has been mentioning it, and sector interests have been mentioning it. And it is for us to understand that as we continue to train, develop more skills, to certify more workers, to be able to classify them, Madam Speaker, and then to remunerate according to classification, the industry becomes more attractive, including some of the social measures that I mentioned earlier on. And so we think that we will be able to cover the grounds in short order. However, in the interim, there are issues and there are problems. And so whilst we are not making a call about bringing in, foreign workers or anything like that, we are making the point that we will have to ensure that the capacity to deliver on the demand that this recovery is presented is here in Jamaica, and we do not lose out because of human capital disruptions. Very, very important point. Now, achieving this type of harmony, Madam Speaker, is the pathway to resolving that very crippling problem. The second, of course, has to do with our supply chain logistics in general. And the member from West St. Andrew, who will speak next, and I have had a lot of discussions on that. And we have to look at how to enable the sufficiency of supplies so that this great, what we call entrepause period, when everything is happening again and people are moving and people are consuming and people are buying and people are traveling. And the story is that of all the activities on planet Earth now that will take a beating in a recession, travel and tourism remains number one of those that will not be touched. And that's an interesting point. And we see it happening everywhere. So we have to build capacity here for goods and services and food and parts and equipment and all the other supplies that are going to be needed to keep our plant and machinery afloat. So, Madam Speaker, the establishment of a global tourism resilience supply center is one of the proposals that we have on the table. The member and I have been talking about it too, but it has gained momentum now because we are finding suppliers across the world who are willing to transport goods to Jamaica for logistical purposes and then to redirect in nearshoring activities to the Caribbean and the rest of the Americas. So we are excited about moving forward with that. I've established a team under Wilfred Bagaloo to give us a full outline as to how this logistics supply center can be established and made functional in Jamaica. Madam Speaker, global inflation is another such challenge and concern that we have. As the global supply chain challenges and labor shortages specifically, I know, go hand in hand, Madam Speaker, with inflation, and the impact on the industry is huge as it is varied. The high airline ticket prices, higher food prices, higher goods prices, labor costs increase, higher energy costs, and so on. And all those are factors that we have to deal with. So, Madam Speaker, capacity constraints and public order issues are more significant now than they were pre-COVID-19. And I want everyone to listen to this one for me, especially my friends on the other side. Because, Madam Speaker, the pandemic and the current boom in tourism members has drawn more and more of our citizens into the tourism space, offering a myriad of goods and services. So there's also a good thing, Madam Speaker, that so many more people are coming into the tourism space. But it also can be a bad thing if order and criminality and poor practices are made to creep in and provide, Madam Speaker, a disruption of the destination assurance that we offer to our visitors. So it takes one bad incident, Madam Speaker, just one damage at a location, and it destroys the destination, not just for weeks or months, but for years. I think we have a duty to ensure that persons entering this space follow the rules and are respectful of the importance of law and order. And, Madam Speaker, I have a difficulty when we try to excuse disorder on the basis of color, class, race, social standing, poor, rich, white, black, young, old. And I think that we have to take a strong position, all of us in this House, Madam Speaker, on both sides, irrespective of the political fallout that it may cause. Let us stand up for good law and order and discipline in the society. Because that discipline is not just to supply an opportunity for one side. It is to enable a possibility for all sides. And if once we understand that, Madam Speaker, then I'm sure our rhetoric will change and our actions equally. So, Madam Speaker, I must also underscore that even though Jamaica is perceived in some quarters of having a challenge in terms of safety, the record shows that our record of visitor safety in Jamaica is enviable across the world, with a record of 0.1% of all the crimes committed against our visitors. And I think that this is something that we should take note of. And when the member from St. James Northwest and our Minister of National Security and the Police Commissioner announced a 20% reduction in crime in the first quarter of this year, that was good news for all of us, and I think we want to commend it. Madam Speaker, our roadways and our easement expansion are the conduits to the resort areas, and they must become important, Madam Speaker, for all of us to manage and manage together. Our Prime Minister has outlined a number of plans to begin the expansion of these roadways, including highways, and our Minister of Finance himself made reference to a $274.5 million project for the Montego Bay Perimeter Road, which is to begin now to ease some of that pressure and to create a bypass, Madam Speaker, of some 25 kilometers of roadways. We have also, Madam Speaker, from the International Finance Corporation, the good work of our Minister, that we will be able to provide the corridor from Rose Hall to Ochereas to create a new opportunity for access and connectivity on the North Coast, bypassing the bottleneck areas of Priory and Discovery Bay and Runaway Bay and so on. But more importantly, Madam Speaker, for us in the West, a continuation of the bypass road that will start in Montego Bay to bypass now Hopewell, a real bottleneck, and Lucy, a real bottleneck, so that access to Negril will be easy. And Madam Speaker, all of these are very important issues that we know they represent challenges, but the good news is that we are responding to them, and we're responding well. Our Minister of National Security and our Minister of Transport have been working with the airports, and we have had bottlenecks in the airport, as we know, as a consequence also of the recovery and the extent to which the recovery has been strong. We now have real difficulty maneuvering in the immigration halls and so on of the the Montego Bay International Airport in particular. And the good news is that the investment is there. 70 million the Prime Minister announced for further addition, the extension of the runway, and there's going to be an improvement of the immigration and the reception halls. We are going to make sure that the visitor facilitation, resulting also from the use of technology, better technology, e-gates to be established, Madam Speaker, right? We're going to dispense with the C5 form so that visitors coming to Jamaica now on the plane don't have to fill out any forms anymore, and you'll be able to come and your data, your biometric information will be there so that you can. So, Madam Speaker, all these are very important part of the facilitation that we are involving in to remove and ease the challenges that I indicate to you resulting from our recovery. Madam Speaker, we have already spoken to much of what we want to do in terms of building the platform and the architecture for the way forward. The labour market, Madam Speaker, is a major concern for us. And I want to make that point very clear because at another point earlier in the financial debate, I heard comments in regards to the labour market arrangements, and I agree. We have to do something about it. And we have been. That's the good news. Because with the training program that we've had, is to build what we call stackable credentials in the industry, so that we can classify the workers of the industry, and by so doing, remunerate according to classification. That will be a game changer in terms of the whole labour market arrangement. Providing social development through housing, which we have spoken about, the pension plan that we have had. And all these are vital elements to change the whole labour market arrangement and to make the tourism sector a more attractive place for workers and for better rewards for the workers of the industry. But a question that is there for us, Madam Speaker, is that we don't want to just be talking about it without evidence base. And we are driven by evidence base. Our action and our policies are driven by evidence base. So we have established, Madam Speaker, a task force headed by Dr. Waller, and already we have put out the RFP for consultants to come in and for us to look carefully now at all the elements, bring in the trade unions and everybody else to let us look at the labour market arrangements in tourism so that we can find a path that will enable us to recover well and to not leave a single worker behind. Madam Speaker, innovation is at the heart of the way forward for tourism. And we believe in investing in ideas. And you might have heard me only last week in Washington calling on the IFIs to invest in ideas. And tourism for us is built on ideas. It's always about what's new. It's always about what's different. It's always how you can add value and do something better than somebody else somewhere else. And that's why we are spending, Madam Speaker, $40 million on bringing young people into an incubator arrangement with ideas. Already, we have 17 groups, and I think it's 27 young people. Some of them are here. Anyone to raise a hand? Yes? Young people from the incubator? Yes, yes, yes. And Madam Speaker, what they're saying is that these are young people with no capital. These are people with no collateral. These are people whose only collateral are their ideas. And we put treasure on ideas because that's how we're going to make the difference in tourism in the future. And so we are training and building their capacity. But we're doing more than that. When these 17, this first cohort is finished in May, then they need now to have startups. And they need to transfer from the state of ideas where the goods and services are being determined into action. And we are putting $100 million from our fund, Madam Speaker, to enable that transition, working with NBJ and with the Ministry of Finance to make sure that we can expand the group of young people from across Jamaica who will be the real definers of the new experiences of tourism for the future. We're excited about that, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we are strong in building capacity to add more visitors to the country. And airlift, airlift, airlift. Everybody says that. You don't swim to Jamaica. You have to fly. And so we are active out there, Madam Speaker, getting new airlines to come to Jamaica. We have expansions with the American Airlines Group, Frontier Airlines, Spirit Airlines, Arajet, a new carrier that is coming from Damrep to Jamaica now, and also with back-end arrangements into South America. We're going into dealing, Madam Speaker, with expanding the work of LATAM from Peru, Avianca from Colombia, Copa Airlines, and next week, Madam Speaker, the team, which I will lead with the Director of Tourism and Delano, will be going to the Arabian travel market to engage the big four from the GCC countries. That is Saudi and a new airline that they have just from out of Jeddah, and Qatar and Emirates. Yesterday, Emirates sent me their miniature 387. So when you come to my office now, you'll see the Emirates 387. Now that the runway has been expanded, and we hope to have that ready by summer, right, at MBJ, we will be able to say when we go to Dubai next week to Emirates, yes, you can start thinking now about flying to Montego Bay and then be able to remain from Montego Bay. So, Madam Speaker, our cruise industry is back on track. We are expecting to go back to new ways at the end of summer this year. But, Madam Speaker, I want to close this section because I know that there's another opportunity at the back end. And so I'm going to save some more of this for the back end. But, Madam Speaker, I cannot close without talking about the investment opportunities that we, and I want to, Madam Speaker, the Minister of Finance will bear with me if I boast a little bit. Because I believe that this investment portfolio that tourism is unfolding now is the largest and most impressive in the history of tourism in Jamaica. 20,000 new rooms to come, Madam Speaker, over the next 5 to 10 years. And they are distributed in all the parishes. In St. Anne, we have Palm Beach Villa with 100 rooms. Secrets Resort, 700 rooms. Bahia Principe for 2,500 more. Sandals Royal Duns River, 1,000. Sandals Duns, yes, a total here of 570 plus 400, 900 rooms from Sandals alone in St. Anne. Madam Speaker, in Trelawney, Harmony Cove, yes? Minister of Finance, Harmony Cove, yes, 1,000 room and more. Planet Hollywood for 650 rooms. The Rio Aquil, 753. That should be finished early next year. And of course, Excellence Oyster Bay, 50 rooms. Over in St. James, Madam Speaker, the Unico Hard Rock Casino and associated hotels, 2,000 rooms. In Vista Ambassadors, 432 rooms. Dream Resort, 280 rooms. And over in Hanover, the new Star, Hanover will have 4,000 new rooms in the next 3 years. Princess with 2,000, Grand Palladium 950, Viva Wyndham 1,000, and Sanders the Grill. I don't even put a figure there yet because Adam don't finish telling me how many rooms are going to be there added there. So, Madam Speaker, what we're saying here is that when you add that to Westmoreland, and where is the member from Central Westmoreland? So, Westmoreland, and you know, every time people talk about Westmoreland and tourism, they say Negri. Right? But we have other things for them now. Savlamar. All right. Nothing more said than that. And that is going to be a game changer, Madam Speaker. That facility is going to be a game changer. Because it's not just about hotels here now. It's about creating a whole ecosystem, a whole tourism ecosystem in Paradise in Westmoreland. Madam Speaker, for the metropolitan area of Kingston, the Hylton 300 room that is about to come on stream. And of course, you remember the ROK downtown. And when you look at what has happened downtown, Madam Speaker, it's a statement that yes, downtown, Member Williams, downtown can come back alive. And I'm proud to see in the short space of time with that 168 room facility there, what they have done and how profitable, that's important, it has been in the 3 months. So, Madam Speaker, Portland, Dragon Bay, Portland, and Portland is set, Madam Speaker, with the Prime Minister's program to become the real mecca of what I call sustainable tourism. And we're working on that. High-end tourism. St. Thomas is the new oyster in the east. We have already done the work on that. My PS and team have done the detailed research on it, and we are ready. And there's right now a local investor from St. Thomas with 1,000 rooms in St. Thomas. And in addition, I'm talking with some investors from the Dominican Republic. They were here a few weeks ago, and they want to come now and look at creating a whole village, a tourism village, similar to the one they have in the Dominican Republic. I'm not calling any name at this time. But it will tell you, St. Thomas is ready for the move, and the Prime Minister has made all the investments in there right now. The roadway, the Southern Highway, has now become the real access point for new development in that area. Less than an hour from Norman Manley Airport to any part of St. Thomas now. That's music to the ears of investors. Madam Speaker, we are excited about, we have St. Mary. St. Mary, I'm telling you, I'm discussing now. Yes. We don't want to tell them because the St. Mary product is going to be a little different from what we have elsewhere. It's besides villas being the mainstay along that corridor, the Jamaica Riviera as we're calling it, right? It's going to be a higher end of product, but also it's going to be tied to entertainment. Because there's a group that is now having that discussion with us that we won't say very much more yet until later on. Madam Speaker, the shared economy. The shared economy, Madam Speaker, has become, in our point, the most innovative of what we call the process of democratization in tourism. The ownership of the accommodation sector is seeing a transition. But it's not a transition that is going to eviscerate any. It's a transition that is going to add value to many. Because now, with the sharing economy, Madam Speaker, tourism is in every crevice and corner of Jamaica. You see tourists down Trenchtown. You see tourists on Maxwell Avenue. You see that Spanish Town. You see them in Red Hills Road. You see them up in Octem Betty. And I'm not send for you to come. They're all over the place because of the sharing economy. Most people refer to it as Airbnb. Madam Speaker, just to let you know that 29% of the visitors who came to Jamaica last year came through Airbnb. And they, Madam Speaker, I don't know. and they, Madam Speaker, and they, Madam Speaker, said tourism is for the big man. And the little people are not inserted therein. I just want to say again, Madam Speaker, that never before in the history of Jamaica has tourism done so much for the economy of Jamaica. So, Madam Speaker, In closing, really I want to just indicate that the future of tourism is bright in Jamaica. We have the vision, we have the sense of it, and we are driven by a mission that will create an inclusive industry for our country. So, Madam Speaker, I just want to say that we will continue to push forward with the key priority projects and initiatives to shape tourism governance infrastructure to boost the sustainable development of the sector. Madam Speaker, we will build capacity by upskilling and certifying thousands of Jamaicans to work in the tourism industry. We want to create a secure future for our tourism workers through the Tourism Workers Pension Plan and adequate, affordable housing. We want to strengthen the linkages, Madam Speaker, with other sectors of the economy, particularly agriculture and manufacturing, and to provide a benefit for more small farmers, farmers with 1 acre, half acre, quarter acre, 3 acres, no more than 5 acres, so that they can have a place in the sun and get a piece of the tourism pie. We want to ensure, Madam Speaker, that the small and medium tourism enterprises, the little guys, the little taxi man, the little juta man, the little maxi taxi man, all have an opportunity to have a stake in the tourism industry and to provide funding for them. We want to boost the industry for local communities through festivals, more coffee festival, more rum festival, more bacchanal, more Madam Speaker, we want to boost the benefit of the industry to our local communities by expanding the Spruce Up program to allow more communities to get a benefit from the industry. We want to promote broader participation by all Jamaicans. We want to ensure, above all now, Madam Speaker, and I want our opposition and everybody to share in this one with me, we want to ensure safety, security, and sustainability of our natural and built resources. We want to invest millions of dollars from Jamaican funds. We want more Jamaicans, Madam Speaker, to be inserted in this rich, lucrative tourism value chain. Yes, this government, for the first time, can say more has been done for the economy of Jamaica because of tourism than any other time in our history. God bless you.
Mr. Tourism.
Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, I now ask that the sectoral debate be suspended. What a presentation, colleagues.
Yes.
Madam Speaker, we're not yet ready to suspend the debate. We have our second speaker. Madam Speaker, all right, a member of Parliament from St. Andrew Western, Mr. Hylton.
Member.
Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, an attitude of gratitude is always important in life. And especially for us members of Parliament, who depend on the support and cooperation of so many in the public sector and in the political arena. I thank them all, including the clerk and staff of the Houses of Parliament, and my political colleagues inside and outside of this chamber, and on both sides of the aisle. In particular, the Leader of Opposition, who is a firm, fair, and wise guide. To you, Madam Speaker, for your kind words for me always, and your thoughtful guidance of the affairs of this House. I also thank the people of Western St. Andrew for their continued love and support. I'm grateful, Madam Speaker, for the continued support of my councillors, Councillor Hazel Anderson, Byron Clark, Norman Perry, caretaker Michelle Thomas, and members of the constituency executive, some of whom are here today. I thank my office staff, Ms. Jennifer Edwards and Cassie Campbell, for their yeoman efforts in making the office work for the people of Western St. Andrew, along with my assistant, Mr. Mario Wallace. I acknowledge, Madam Speaker, as well, the support of my driver and my CPO. I should not forget my long-serving secretary, Ms. Roxanne Brown, as well. Last but not by no means least, Madam Speaker, my family. Madam Speaker, it is not possible to do the job of representation well without the support of family. I want to thank my wife, Judith, who is here, and my daughter, Nile, who is not. She told me she chose violin practice than being here today. I would also like to recognize, Madam Speaker, my special guest this afternoon, the Archmandrite of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church in Jamaica, newly arrived from Ethiopia, Abba Samuel Tedela. Madam Speaker, this 23-24 sectoral debate is extremely important. Coming as it does towards the tail end of the COVID-19 pandemic and amidst the search for sustainable development and growth, not just to restore the status quo ante, but to open new pathways to economic development and growth. My presentation will, therefore, open some new windows, which we must do to achieve our full potential as an economy with great advantages by virtue of our geographical location, as well as air and maritime advantages, among others. My presentation, Madam Speaker, is titled Surviving to Thriving, a Time for New Directions. Because, Madam Speaker, we need not convince ourselves anymore of Jamaica's potential, but must now urgently actualize these potentials to achieve greater levels of prosperity that we can see and feel for our people. Certainly, the time has come for Jamaica to become a major player in global trade, providing a more resilient and sustainable global supply chain. And the Minister of Tourism spoke eloquently to the need in the tourism sector. To accomplish our goals, Madam Speaker, we will need to transform our production structures by implementing a mix of innovative policy measures, efficient organization structures, trained and certified human resources, and a rapid technological deployment. I start, Madam Speaker, by recognizing the catalytic role of an entrepreneurial public sector in driving growth and development in the national economy. Madam Speaker, I begin my presentation by reminding this Honourable House of the catalytic role of an entrepreneurial public sector in driving growth and sustainable development in the national economy. We are all aware that the public sector has a crucial institutional role in policy making, implementation, and monitoring, and that the quality of human resources is a key factor to successful policy and program in planning, design, and implementation. However, it is important to note that public sector innovators, who we must be trying to retain in any reform process, do not innovate or function optimally in a vacuum. They operate most effectively and efficiently in a structured organizational environment that includes government's respect for people, good human resources management practices, leadership with integrity, good stewardships, and excellence. These are the hallmarks of creating an effective and productive public sector, Madam Speaker, that embraces innovation and strive for a positive contribution towards sustainable economic growth and development. Madam Speaker, the available economic data indicate that the economy experienced what I call a snapback effect in the post-pandemic recovery, putting us to where economic performance was just prior to the shock of COVID-19. If, however, the leveling off in future growth projected in the national economy to be about 1.1% is to be avoided, the important role of an entrepreneurial public sector cannot be overstated. Effective leadership, Madam Speaker, must engender a highly motivated and appropriately incentivized public sector to play a key role in Jamaica's nation-building journey to overcome the challenges of post-COVID-19 and ensuring that Jamaica not merely survives, but thrives. In today's fast-changing world, with new technologies and forms of disruption posed by climate events, the country must have a functionally equipped and tech-savvy public service that can work in an increasingly complex and multifaceted environment. This requires a purpose-driven public service that continuously reviews and improves the way it works while effectively working with citizens and stakeholders to co-create new and bold solutions. The reform public service, Madam Speaker, we envision must also be inclusive, embracing a results-oriented environment, and takes its decision on a risk-based model, which uses data that provide leading indicators instead of lagging indicators in the policy-making process. Madam Speaker, this will require a commitment to ongoing education, training and upskilling or reskilling to ensure that public officers have the skills and knowledge necessary to navigate an increasingly complex environment. It also requires working together in a spirit of openness, honesty, and transparency, which encourages engagement, collaboration, and respectful communication. Unfortunately, the current rush by the administration and forceful implementation of a complex process has resulted in many signed agreements but uncertain outcomes. As the clarity of what has been signed by the representatives of the various groups become clearer, as reflected in their new pay packages, A sense of betrayal and deep disappointment with the government has set in. The longer-term implications are concerning. The pronouncement by several of the groups, including the education sector, shows an unfinished process marked by an absence of meaningful consultation and transparency in the negotiations and a lack of respect for and treatment of the workers. The threatened response is the mass exodus from the public sector of some key personnel with critical institutional knowledge, innovative thinkers, and dedicated persons who are no longer willing to remain in the sector due to the lack of respect, caring, and deceit. This will have far-reaching impact on the government's ability to play its institutional role, Madam Speaker. The compensation review process was a major opportunity for the government to create the conditions for a high-performance public sector capable of transitioning Jamaica from surviving to thriving by achieving sustainably high rates of economic growth and development yet to be experienced. Instead, Madam Speaker, the mishandling of the compensation review has reaped deep mistrust by almost every bargaining group, in spite of the hundreds of billions of dollars spent in the process. Madam Speaker, good governance demands exploration of the various ways in which to build and to engender trust in public administration. Public trust, Madam Speaker, leads to greater compliance with a wide range of public policies. It also nurtures popular participation, strengthens social cohesion, and builds institutional legitimacy. In the longer term, trust is needed to help government tackle long-term and difficult societal challenges, such as fighting inflation, managing climate change, navigating changing geopolitical environment, responding to post-COVID shifts in supply chains and global trade, as well as changing labor markets. Madam Speaker, successive administrations have aimed at reducing bureaucracy and increasing productivity in the public sector. Yet the current effort in seeking to accomplish the objective has failed miserably, both in the management of the process and in its suboptimal outcome. Madam Speaker, there is no reward for tackling a difficult task poorly and making matters worse for the intended beneficiaries. There's no reward. The promise made by the government at the outset of the process that no public sector worker would be worse off at the end has simply not materialized. So, judged even by its own yardstick, the effort is a failure. Concerning the urgent tasks of engendering sustained development and high growth rates in the economy, to address social inequities, crime and poor health outcomes, the state of uncertainty and simmering resentment which now exist at the end of the compensation review cannot be the hoped for or anticipated outcome of the crucial reform exercise. Madam Speaker, a new PNP administration will seek to rectify the resulting inequities and anomalies created by this failed process. Created by this failed process. Time come for a new direction. Madam Speaker, I turn next to a key leadership role for the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce, which I for which I'm the Shadow Minister. Madam Speaker, it is concerning that the leadership of the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce exemplifies the style of engagement by the public sector workers showcased by the administration, and which has resulted in the general malaise and disruption in key agencies affecting the nation's supply chain, including Customs and Passport, Immigration and Citizenship Agency, PICA. The ministry itself has been the subject of major experimentations with the joining of the critical agricultural portfolio for a short period, to be followed by several ministerial changes, 4 so far, and portfolio subjects shifting. Each leadership change, Madam Speaker, has brought about its own internal shifts and changes of personnel at the board and operational levels, in the several key agencies and departments in this important ministry, in which certainty of policy direction is of utmost importance for entrepreneurs and investors alike. Madam Speaker, the existing situation is not an improvement on what existed before. In fact, things have gotten worse. Since the incumbent minister took the reign of the ministry just over a year ago, several personnel changes have taken place at senior levels. Many of the heads of key agencies have either left or otherwise demitted office at great cost to the taxpayers for settlements, or have separated or have been threatened with separation under controversial circumstances. To put it mildly, Madam Speaker, the state of affairs at the ministry, department, and agency is a mess.
That's an understatement.
A few of these disputes have made headlines in the news recently, Madam Speaker. One of which I find particularly disturbing, as it demonstrates a callous disregard for the seminal contribution made by the agency head and unfair treatment by the board of a head of agency who has made an acknowledged stellar contribution to nation building. Madam Speaker, I refer to the case of the head of the Jamaica Business Development Corporation, JBDC, a critical support agency for de-risking of the micro, small, and medium-sized enterprise sector in the economy, who has served for over 40 years in the public service, including the last 22 years as CEO of the agency. Notwithstanding the board and CEO having agreed a 2-year contract extension previously, the board chairman reportedly called an emergency board meeting for the purpose of rescinding the contract and instead offered a reduced 1-year contract. A standoff still exists between the CEO and the agency boards, as the CEO was not paid for nearly 5 months. It was only after the intervention of an expert labor relations practitioner and an expose in the media that she was paid. Questions certainly arise, and answers should be provided in the appropriate forum, and these include: 1, was the chairman instructed to change the board's decision to grant the CEO a 2-year extension to the CEO's contract? And if so, by whom? 2, why has this matter been so protracted? And has the minister himself intervened and caused a settlement of the matter? Madam Speaker, this and other similar actions of threats, against
Members, I have warned about these sotto voce comments that are passing. And I'm dead serious. Please, I ask you to be careful what you say across, just in case it comes to the Speaker's ears.
Madam Speaker.
And yes.
This and other such similar actions of threats against senior level staff is having a debilitating effect on staff morale, both within the ministry and agencies. The minister must act now to bring order to the current situation and to refocus the work of this critical ministry, its departments and agencies, on its critical mission to foster growth and development at the enterprise level and across industries. To do this, however, the situation of several acting agency heads and transitional boards, best described as bringing Hollywood to the ministry and its agencies, for the number of acting personnel in various positions, must be quickly addressed in the interest of good governance. Madam Speaker, I next address the need for a coherent policy framework and action within the ministry and government for driving development and growth. Madam Speaker, perhaps the most glaring and consequential outcome of the apparent lack of sound and innovative leadership by the administration after more than 7 years in office is the acknowledged mishandling of the fledgling cannabis industry. Wow. Many have long thought, Madam Speaker, many have long thought of marijuana as Jamaica's most resilient agro-industrial crop, with the potential for developing a strong industrial base for growth and development of the economy, with widespread scientific, medicinal, and nutraceutical benefits. Jamaica's pioneering role among developing countries in decriminalizing marijuana and the establishment of a framework for the medical and nutraceutical industry, as well as its sacramental use by the Rastafari community, was bequeathed by the previous PNP administration. And Madam Speaker, credit must be given to the Leader of Opposition. He led that process, and could have been it still needs to be a success. The Minister's recent attempt at defending the importation from Canada of large quantities of cannabis, ostensibly for research purposes, and in breach of planned quarantine rules, was a source of outrage by Jamaicans everywhere. The matter rightly earned the Minister a public rebuke from the Prime Minister right here in this House. There has been much talk by the Minister since then.
Madam Speaker, on a point of order.
But as my grandmother
Madam Speaker, on a point of order.
What are you putting point of order for?
Hold a minute. Just let me hear the point of order.
I'm trying to understand
No,
where.
hold on. Point of order. Hold on. Just please.
I think he's misleading the House because I am unaware of where. But say you won't be that chair for much longer, you know, Angela. I think I need. The member said, Madam Speaker, that importation of ganja was done in violation of quarantine rules.
Yes.
I'm trying to find out where. I have not heard or seen any report
That question was asked
that said
and not answered.
that quarantine rules were breached by the companies that were licensed to import the small quantities of marijuana. So I'm trying to find out where the member got that information from.
Member?
Yeah. Madam
Please.
Speaker. Madam Speaker. Yeah.
To be striking the gavel because you are not just being silent and listening to what I'm saying. The member has raised a point and the member has got up to explain what he has.
Madam Speaker, the record will show that I tabled questions in this House. These questions were answered or not answered in the case, and among the question was the question about the compliance with the quarantine rules. To date, I have not gotten
Madam Speaker, I wish to raise another point.
asked a question and the member is answering.
Well, Madam, I know the tactic, Madam Speaker. But, Madam Speaker, the questions and answers or non-answers are on the record. They were tabled in this House.
Speaker, and another point. Madam Speaker, he made a statement. No, you're not going to bully me. You're not going to bully me. No, you're not. He made a definitive statement.
It is.
That it was. Marijuana was imported in Jamaica in breach of quarantine rules.
It was.
He has not validated that statement by what he just said a while ago. He said he made queries via questions in this House, which he says were not answered. So how can you make a grand leap from a lack of answer to a conclusion that it was in breach? You need to withdraw it. He needs to withdraw the statement.
Can you allow me to rule, member? The minutes, member, you are correct. Statements were tabled.
Yes.
But although they were not answered, if you have made that statement, what I would like for you to do, having said they're in breach, is to validate and show this House where it was in breach. And
Madam Speaker, I stand very firmly on the statement. The response that came was an explanation as to problems that exist among agencies. That's the response that came. And it's on the record, and I refuse to withdraw that because I cannot successfully contest. Cannot be.
And just know what members will you allow to listen. The member made a statement. Questions were tabled that I signed and allowed in this House. And we can get them from Hansard. There was an explanation that was given. So, if the member has proof to show that it was not in thing, because an explanation came to this House that has not been refuted today.
Madam Speaker.
Exactly.
Madam Speaker, it cannot be that the Honourable House allows a member to make a definitive statement in regard to a portfolio being managed by a minister that there was breach of quarantine rules. That was his statement, you know. It wasn't a question. It was a conclusion.
Yes.
And then that conclusion is allowed to stand without any evidence to back up that conclusion. He needs to withdraw the statement as it is without merit. He has no evidence of it. And he is bringing the ministry and the minister into disrepute.
Member, and my ruling on this point is, that questions were tabled and explanation was given. However, if you make a statement, member, that something is in breach of the quarantine, the correct thing is to show where it is in breach. That is correct. That is. I recall very clearly the questions were tabled. You know, I really can't speak while members speak. The questions were tabled. I signed off. An explanation was given. But if you say they are in breach, you need to indicate clearly to the House where the breach was.
Madam Speaker.
Standing your...
Yeah. Madam Speaker, I think you'd accept that the dispositive evidence would rest in the Ministry of Agriculture, in their possession.
No, but yes. Member.
Yeah. We're done.
Member.
So,
member. You know, members, please, I'm not going to try and fight. If there are other persons who are going to rule, then rule. But if not, allow me to speak. And I really ought to be heard in silence. I do agree that the questions were tabled, the explanation was given. But I still hold that if you make a statement in this House that there was a breach, then you must, regardless of whether or not the minister has answered that, in standing and No, in standing, and I'll pull the standing order. Once you make the statement that he's in breach, I agree with everything you have said, but if you make a statement that he's in breach and a point of order is raised, then you are required to bring proof to show where the brief was. And until you do so, the correct thing, member, is to withdraw it. You will have every opportunity, and indeed, if you have at the end, time will be given, but you must bring the proof that the brief was.
Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, I will amend my statement to say that it is widely believed, including by myself, that there has been a breach of the rules.
No, just a minute. Allow me, because point of order has been raised. So if you are withdrawing that and saying you would widely believe, I'm okay with that, because I can't challenge your belief or the wide belief. But you will withdraw that he breached it and say it is widely believed. That is fine. And while you do that, members, your time for speaking has expired. House Leader.
That's what you're aiming at. That's what you're aiming at. That's what you're aiming at.
Madam Speaker.
That's what you're aiming at.
Madam Speaker, with regards to the members, what I shall say, circumlocutory way of withdrawing the comment. And the time having expired, Madam Speaker, I beg to move that his time be extended to allow him to complete his presentation. May it please.
The question before the House is that the member be given sufficient time to complete his presentation. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. Member?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, colleague, including the questioner, the mover of this. Yes. Madam Speaker, continuing, there has been much talk by the minister since then. But as my grandmother taught me by saying, son, no listen to no noise, watch the seal. Madam Speaker, this incident is yet another example of the failure of policy guidance from the ministry to a key regulatory body under its jurisdiction with potentially devastating outcome for the country's growth and development opportunities. This incident, Madam Speaker, is no different either in its importance or potential negative consequence for the country's economy and reputation among trading nations than another publicized incident. Madam Speaker, it is also known that several other critical agencies are even at this moment facing management or board level disruptions. I'm advised that some 18 such boards and or senior level management personnel have been or are being changed for other than their lack of performance. The situation of Exim Bank is just the latest in the string of displaced personnel in a one-year period. This is highly unusual, Madam Speaker, for such wide-scale disruption to be occurring within the ministry and its agencies outside of a change of administration. The opposition will continue its oversight of activities of the ministry and its agencies and will report on the need as it arises. Not even a party shop could be run in this way, Madam Speaker, much less a ministry of this critical importance to the health and performance of the country's enterprises and its economic growth prospects. Time come for a new direction. Madam Speaker, how does the opposition propose that we realize economic growth and development in the post-COVID-19 period, getting beyond recovery and survival to thriving? Madam Speaker, a little over 3 years ago, Jamaica and the rest of the world was being alerted to the deadly effects of COVID-19 pandemic and the advisories from the World Health Organization provided daily guidance to governments around the world on the measures to be undertaken to avoid the spread of the virus. But all essential services, people and goods were ordered to stay in place and movements severely restricted for close to 2 years. Governments and their populations were in an unprecedented crisis as the survival of businesses across all industries and entire population was at best uncertain. Madam Speaker, the pandemic achieved what many of us had struggled to communicate to the Jamaican population for nearly 8 years previously, about the existence of a global supply chain and a method of transporting and storing goods, data, money, and people across borders, termed global logistics. Jamaica and much of the world, Madam Speaker, had finally awoken to the reality that such an ecosystem and an industry indeed existed, and although imperceptible to most, it was real. Everyday commodities and services, once taken for granted, were suddenly unavailable, or at least not available in their accustomed quantities. Stores and supermarkets globally were running short on essential supplies. Tempers flared as the struggle for basic food and sanitary items intensified. The once unknown supply chain, Madam Speaker, of which we now speak, was broken, and the effects felt everywhere around the world. The medication and the personal protective gears necessary to save lives and to provide protection to healthcare workers and critically ill patients were short in supplies, if available at all. The world was in turmoil. But as the pandemic eased, Madam Speaker, and things began returning to normal, flights resuming, and the closed hospitality sector and factories began reopening, then came the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and war had again broken out in Europe. Madam Speaker, the unthinkable had happened. Further disruption in the global supply of food and fuel sourced from the two countries at war had suddenly become short or unavailable. And even if they were available in whatever limited quantities, the prices had increased dramatically. The supply chains were either disrupted, this time by geopolitics and the imposition of sanctions against Russia. And the further break in the supply chain has led to a global inflationary spiral. The Minister of Tourism recognized that and spoke to that. Madam Speaker, governments the world over were in a fight to control inflation. Further damage to the global and local economy is being done by the measures imposed by governments to fight inflation. The most vulnerable in our society are paying the cost of these measures. Madam Speaker, as previously mentioned, nearly a decade earlier, there was a specific proposal for Jamaica becoming a logistic hub and the fourth node in the global trading system, joining Singapore, Dubai, and Rotterdam. This was initiated by the PNP government and heavily promoted. Like the other three existing hubs, Jamaica's geostrategic location in the center of the Americas, with an estimated market of over 800 million persons, and within a 4-hour flight radius to major population centers, provides an unmatched opportunity to host a major logistics and trade hub. The opportunity for Jamaica, Madam Speaker, to contribute strategically to the redesign of a more flexible and resilient supply chain, thereby achieving this objective in becoming a global logistic hub, demands urgent action. Madam Speaker, in order for Jamaica to realize its objective, a mix of integrated policies, improvement in physical and digital infrastructure, as well as focused attention in developing our human resource capacity across key industries and institutions must be targeted. Importantly, the effort must be sustained for at least the next 10 to 15 years. Developing a logistics-centered economy must involve the whole of government. This includes an entrepreneurial public sector with critical support from the private sector groups, representing both large enterprises and small and medium-sized enterprises, academia, as well as local and foreign investments. The good news is, Madam Speaker, that at last the government, opposition, and the private sector groups are fully aligned on the urgent need to develop Jamaica's capability to become the global logistic gateway for the Americas and to become that fourth node in the global trading system. This is evidenced by work already done by the last PNP-led government in commissioning the Global Logistic Hub Initiative Master Plan and Market Analysis. The study was accepted by the current administration in 2017 and tabled in this Honourable House. Unfortunately, no public debate on this crucial document ever took place. The plan to expand the Port of Kingston and the Kingston Container Terminal was with the grant of a concession to the French shipping line CMA CGM was wisely supported by the incoming administration. And more recently, the Cayman Special Economic Zone was re-announced as a project to be pursued by the government. Madam Speaker, I commend the government for continuing these plans for the country, the economy, and the people will benefit. Importantly, Madam Speaker, the Jamaica Special Economic Zone Authority, or JESIZA, had been implemented, and the Special Economic Zone Act, piloted by me in the House, was brought into effect by the current government as key pillars in attracting investments in the development of the supply chain and logistics sector, as well as the business process outsourcing sector. The success of the BPO sector, Madam Speaker, during and after the pandemic has proved the importance of the sector. However, its sustainability is being challenged by rapid developments in Industry 4.0 technologies, including artificial intelligence, or AI. Madam Speaker, recently I was invited to participate in a forum put on by the private sector organization of Jamaica, titled, "Let's Get Serious with the Logistics-Centered Economy." This came as a first in the series of President's Forum, initiated by the new president of the PSOJ. The panel discussants included representatives of the business sector, themselves engaged in supply chain and logistics operations, the regulatory organization JESIZA, and the legal fraternity. The panel discussants confirmed the viability and urgency of implementing the Global Logistic Hub Initiative. Madam Speaker, given this alignment of support by the opposition, the government, and the private sector for the full development of a global logistics hub in Jamaica, it would be unwise for the government acting unilaterally to undertake sweeping changes in the SEZ Act without appropriate and meaningful consultation with the opposition and the country's economic partners. That would not be a wise thing to do, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the key takeaway from the pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine war is not only that disruption can happen, but that it is inevitable and that building resilience is mandatory if we want to live or we want to thrive rather than simply survive in this emerging global economy. Madam Speaker, the prerequisite for experiencing transformational growth and development in the Jamaican economy in the post-COVID period are the following. 1, successfully reforming the public sector to create an energized, technologically equipped and entrepreneurial organization which is performance-driven, highly productive, and appropriately remunerated. 2, a consensus on the vision and mission of Jamaica becoming a major global logistics and trade hub in the Americas. And 3, the need to formulate a mix of forward-looking policies, programs, and projects in the public and private sectors, which builds flexibility and resilience at both country and enterprise levels to drive sustained growth and development in the economy. Having addressed the first 2 prerequisites earlier in my presentation, I now turn to the final of the 3 prerequisites. Madam Speaker, a PNP administration will seek to build a resilient, flexible, and sustainable high-growth economy by encouraging private sector participation. How should we do this, Madam Speaker? In order to achieve the high level of coordination between the public and private sector groups to realize the logistic hub in the shortest time possible, a PNP administration will replace the failed Economic Growth Council with a Logistics Council, which is focused, goal-oriented, and designed to achieve high levels of coordination among the key stakeholders. By collaborating with key stakeholders, including logistics service providers, shippers, carriers, ports and terminal operators, freight forwarders, custom brokers, as well as manufacturers and exporters, small businesses, academia, and government institutions, the Logistics Council will help to improve the competitiveness and performance of local suppliers and logistics enterprises. This will be done while promoting sustainable development and contributing to Jamaica's economic growth. The main objective of the Logistics Council will be to provide inputs in developing targeted programs and initiatives to help enterprises prepare themselves to participate in the global value chain, to review forward-looking initiatives to assist MSMEs to implement business transformation improvements. This will enable them to emerge stronger and take advantage of the logistics-centered economy, to work outside and alongside government and policymakers and regulators to provide strategic advice and insights that improve the safety, efficiency, and sustainability of the sector, and to strengthen enterprise-level access to the global value and supply chain, while improving the industry's overall performance. And I thought I heard the Minister of Tourism recognizing that and asking that the supply issues need focus. These are the solutions, Minister. To further enhance Jamaica's competitiveness, resilience, and attractiveness as a logistic hub, emphasis must be placed on enhancing its connectivity to the major markets and countries in the world. Already, a major asset in Jamaica becoming the gateway to the Americas is the connection of the Port of Kingston to over 190 different ports around the world, providing markets links to major economies in North, South, and Central America, Europe, Asia, and Africa. Further, Madam Speaker, Jamaica's reputation as a major transshipment hub is already well established and provides a platform to develop the logistics capabilities and to gain a reputation as a value-added logistics hub. This can be achieved by developing in the near port and port hinterland facilities, such as regional distribution hubs. Madam Speaker, we will attract large-scale and foreign investment in the build-out of special economic zones, providing a range of industrial, commercial, and logistics activities, such as Tier 1 warehouses, cold storage, fulfillment and distribution services, ship repairs, bunkering, and ship chandlering, among others. Additionally, Madam Speaker, the build-out of SEZs will provide the opportunity for linkages with domestic firms, both large and small, either as a source of import from or export to the zones, with incentives provided for domestic producers of goods and services to export into the zones without paying GCT on such exports. There are a range of benefits for developers and occupants within the zones. Special provisions benefiting MSC businesses are provided for the SEZ Act and regulations to ensure integration of small and medium-sized businesses into zone activities and, by extension, into global markets. It is important, Madam Speaker, that regardless of size, each business planning to sell its services or goods into the zone accepts the high standards of quality and price competitiveness which the purchasers will demand as a condition of doing business in the zones. For those businesses conducting operations in the zone and wishing to sell into the domestic market, duty is normally imposed unless otherwise exempted. An additional advantage of Jamaica becoming a logistic hub is a network of subsea cables providing enhanced connectivity to other Caribbean islands and beyond to the rest of the world. These physical assets, in turn, provide the backbone to a robust telecommunication, information and communication and ICT network, essential to supplying the logistics and supply chain operations globally. Similarly, Jamaica's logistics capabilities and connectedness of value to local and global logistics operators will be greatly enhanced by the build-out of its multimodal capacity in rail, barge, roads, and air travel or cargo operations. Madam Speaker, to further improve Jamaica's connectivity and logistics infrastructure, the PNP government will develop the Vernon Field Aerotropolis project, championed by former Minister Mike Henry. This is complementary infrastructure, Madam Speaker, as the Vernon Field project will enhance Jamaica's capability to engage in long-haul cargo movement as well as passenger travel to increase Jamaica and the Caribbean region's tourism capacity. It further enhances what I've heard the tourism minister call a resilient tourism industry. This is critical. Madam Speaker, our two major airports are near the sea and are vulnerable to sea level rise against the backdrop of climate change. The Mid-Island location proposed for development of the much talked about Vernon Field Airport provides the flexibility and resilience needed in a trading hub to provide reliability and to mitigate investors' risks. These improvements will inspire companies across the logistic chain to establish operations in Jamaica, as they can rely on frequent and dependable connectivity to reach global markets rapidly. Our local supply chains and e-commerce, last-mile delivery capabilities in parcel, food, clothing, and other business and consumer products will be positively affected. What then are the key policy mix to achieving this vision? Realizing the logistics-centered economy, Madam Speaker, requires us to build on Jamaica's strategic location by developing Tier 1 physical and digital infrastructure, as well as an entrepreneurial public sector that is efficient, motivated, and fairly treated. In addition, The blueprint established in the Global Logistic Hub Initiative Master Plan and Market Analysis must be dusted off and its core recommendations implemented. Among the recommendations is the need for a correct mix of policies and institutions to achieve the desired outcomes, which must now be adjusted to take account of the lessons learned during the pandemic. Madam Speaker, the following mix of policies will be pursued in the next PNP administration. 1. A strengthened trade policy to reflect Jamaica's trade offensive capabilities and interest in successfully building and operating the trade and logistics hub. This will require a network of trade agreements which goes beyond the preferential or asymmetrical agreements currently being pursued by CARICOM. These new agreements will build on the Economic Partnership Agreement with Europe and the Brexit-induced agreement with the United Kingdom to advance services trade, improve market access and rules of origin issues, as well as enhanced interest in participating in the global supply and value chains with strengthened logistics services capabilities. The second of these policies, Madam Speaker, is a revised industrial policy, providing appropriate incentives for tech startups in providing the computing and data analytics capabilities to support investment in Industry 4.0 technologies, such as IoT, Internet of Things, AI, and machine learning, critical in driving advanced manufacturing capabilities, and the design of a flexible and resilient digital supply chains. The industrial policy, Madam Speaker, will take account of the proposed new industrial policy for CARICOM, which must address the structural issues involving energy security, and competitively priced energy. Third, Madam Speaker, is a modern logistic policy to give support to the build-out of the Global Logistic Hub in identifying the critical institutional arrangements as well as infrastructural and policy supports necessary to underpin a multidisciplinary and multi-year approach to a public-private partnership effort. This effort, Madam Speaker, must secure the participation of women, youths, and differently enabled persons to address issues of equity, inclusivity, and sustainability in this transformational effort. Madam Speaker, to transform the economy, we must increase our focus on digital technologies to create tech-enabled solutions to a wide range of issues affecting the economy and society. The government must play a lead role in the embrace of these technologies and leapfrogging our current state of adoption and adaptation of future-facing technologies, which is needed to catalyze innovation and growth across all domains, including in the public sector. To succeed in these, Madam Speaker, education and training in Jamaica must be transformed through a multi-stakeholder effort requiring all able hands and creative minds coming to the fore to transform the current systems. The needs of industry generally and the Global Logistics Hub must be prioritized for there to be alignment on our efforts to develop and grow the economy, thereby providing good-paying jobs, which in turn generate the revenues for government, businesses and families to sustain a multi-year commitment of resources to achieve the goals set for education and training institutions at all levels. In this effort, Madam Speaker, we are well advised to seek the cooperation of our development partners, such as the government of Singapore, which has succeeded in building and operating a logistics-centered economy. In doing so, Singapore has set the standards for education and training against which our efforts at achieving a successful logistic hub in the Caribbean and Americas will be judged. Additionally, our trust NSTA must succeed in overcoming its current challenges in providing the trained and certified skills needed by the increased investment in the logistics-centered economy and the urgent needs of allied industries. By focusing on these areas, we aim to enhance Jamaica's global competitiveness, create new job opportunities, improve our international standing, and position Jamaica as a premier global logistic gateway, interconnecting the Americas with the rest of the world. Madam Speaker, a defined role for our universities in Jamaica and throughout the region must be articulated in this drive to build the current and future leaders of the logistic-powered regional economy. Jamaica's role as a global trade and logistic hub will necessitate the development of complementary infrastructures if development and growth throughout the region is to be realized and sustained. Madam Speaker, in conclusion, Jamaica is in a rare moment when the challenges of achieving high levels of growth and development in our economy and our people intersects with a broad consensus on building a logistic hub in Jamaica to take advantage of our geostrategic location in the Caribbean and the Americas. The alignment of government, the opposition, and the private sector on the logistics-centered economy is itself a rare moment, especially coming after 10 years, after a 10-year debate. The debate was settled largely due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which disrupted the global supply chain and unleashed 2 years of deaths, serious illnesses, unavailability, shortages, and delay of critical goods and services, resulting in a global inflation spiral. The hopefulness of a 16-year-old boy or girl growing up in Jamaica in this period cannot be undermined by an absence of leadership at this very moment of our opportunity. The central importance of trust in our government by the public sector workers, as well as the fact of growing disaffection of the electorate in our political process, increases the premium of consensus among the government, opposition, and the private sector in creating a logistics-centered economy. Madam Speaker, we need to keep alive the hopes and aspirations of that young boy from the inner city and the girl from rural Jamaica who are about to graduate from high school or university. We must instill confidence for a better future for them in Jamaica. The government's failure, therefore, to keep its promise to public sector workers that none would be worse off at the end of the compensation review process, coupled with the treatment of senior public sector workers in the portfolio ministries and agencies, also serve to undermine trust in government and immediately threatens our ability to implement our strategic objectives around which there is consensus. The government must repair this breach of trust among public sector workers. If not, the next PNP administration pledges to fix the inequities arising from this unsettled process. Otherwise, we would have missed an opportunity to create a public sector fit for the challenges of this age and our time. This hopeful moment for the young Jamaican boy and girl is fueled by the fact that we are now embarked on a constitutional reform process to achieve full sovereignty over our affairs after a long and tortuous journey. This opportunity cannot be frittered away. We must unleash the collective energies and creativity of our people and reignite hope and trust in government and in its processes. With the right mix of policies and the level of investments needed in our human resource capacity, our physical and digital infrastructure, Jamaica can become a hub of economic activity and a major contributor to building resilience in the global supply chain network, benefiting our young men and women by creating a different future of opportunities in an economy that is not merely surviving, but is thriving. Time comes for innovative, creative, honest, and trustworthy leadership in government to redirect Jamaica's current path to achieve an inclusive and sustainable economic growth and develop making Jamaica nice for all. God bless Jamaica and our people. Thank you, Madam.
Madam Speaker, I'm sure you'd like us to congratulate the member from Western St. Andrew for a very sober presentation. Western St. Andrew? I was correct. I'm always correct.
No, you're not always correct.
On your account, right? Madam Speaker, I beg to move for recommittal of the items, announcements, bills brought before the Senate, petition, papers, reports from committees, notice of motions given orally, question and answer to questions, motion that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice, motions relating to the sitting of the House, motions to leave to introduce bills, and the presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained. Madam Speaker, may it please you for a suspension of the standing orders to allow these committees.
Members, the question before the House is that there's a suspension of the standing orders to enable us to recommit the items on the agenda that were not dealt with. Those in favour? And also for a suspension of the sectoral debate. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. So we have an agreement on the suspension of the sectoral debate and a recommittal of the items on the agenda.
Madam Speaker, the Minister of Legal Affairs and Constitutional Affairs has a statement, and I beg to move that she be allowed to make her statement at this time. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
And Constitutional Affairs.
Madam Speaker, this ministerial statement is intended to further update this Honourable House and the people of Jamaica on the work of the Constitutional Reform Committee. Madam Speaker, the CRC has hit the ground running. I'm pleased to report that 5 meetings of the full committee have been held since the announcement of its members by the Prime Minister on Wednesday, March 22, 2023, when the committee also had its inaugural meeting. In addition, other meetings and engagements have been held including those of the Public Engagement and Communication Subcommittee, as well as meetings with other stakeholders, such as the Executive Committee of the Jamaica Umbrella Group of Churches, the National Youth Council, and various media houses. Madam Speaker, I should also like to put on the record of this Honourable House that Dr. Elaine McCarthy, Chairman of the Jamaica Umbrella Group of Churches, has subsequently been appointed to the committee. Dr. McCarthy attended her first meeting on Wednesday, April 12. Since the CRC commenced its work, Madam Speaker, numerous comments have been made, issues highlighted, questions asked, and concerns raised about its composition and the process of deliberation. Permit me to use this opportunity to remind that formal terms of reference were finalized and agreed to by the committee. Among other things, these terms indicate that we are building on the vast body of work previously done. They specify that the work will be carried out in phases with proposed timelines, and that decisions on what to recommend are being made by consensus. Madam Speaker, as I've stated in this Honourable House in previous statements, I reiterate that the work of the committee has been executed in phases, 3 phases. In phase 1, we have spoken about patriation of the Constitution. What we're simply saying is that the intention is to bring the Constitution home by having it enacted as an instrument of the Parliament of Jamaica. We're focusing on abolition of the constitutional monarchy, establishment of the Republic of Jamaica, and the other matters that fall within the deeply entrenched provisions of the Constitution for which a referendum is required to amend. Madam Speaker, the ambitious timeline indicated for the tabling of the bill in phase 1 that the electorate will vote on to approve is doable. It is doable because the work is not starting from scratch. The list of issues to be put to the referendum are specified in the Constitution itself. It is not a long list. In fact, these are the process of altering the Constitution itself, the effect of the Constitution as the supreme law of the land, the establishment of the Parliament consisting of the monarch, a Senate, and the House of Representatives, the composition of the Senate with 13 members appointed on the advice of the Prime Minister and 8 members on the advice of the Leader of the Opposition. Who is qualified for membership in both houses? The sessions, life, and extension of the Parliament, the appointment of senators in the aftermath of general elections, where the executive authority of Jamaica is vested, and finally, matters relating to the provisions of the Jamaica Independence Act. Madam Speaker, we will proceed only with those matters on which we have consensus. And this may mean that we'll have to prepare ourselves as a parliament and as a nation, perhaps for more than one referendum, if need be. As I indicated previously, in phase 2, we will review other ordinarily entrenched provisions of the Constitution for which amendments are desired and required, including the wordings and provisions of the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms set out at Chapter 3. We will also proceed to do the full assessment, Madam Speaker, and bringing it together in a new Constitution of Jamaica. Madam Speaker, all decisions of the CRC have been and will continue to be made by consensus. All issues are robustly discussed, taking into account views in the public domain, the experience of the CRC members, and the recommendations of the Joint Select Committee on Constitutional and Electoral Reform. That was done in 1995. Madam Speaker, members of the public will have an opportunity to provide feedback on all recommendations made by the CRC before a submission goes to the Cabinet for its approval. Madam Speaker, since this is a progress report, I'm pleased to announce that the following deliberations, in relation to the following deliberations, consensus has been reached. But let me say that we may have to open up some of the matters in light of developments. But the committee has arrived at consensus in recommending abolition of the constitutional monarchy. This should take no one as surprise, because in fact it is the overarching goal of the reform. Secondly, consensus has been arrived at with the replacement of the King of England with a Jamaican head of state. We have arrived at consensus in recommending the establishment of the office of President as the formal head of state of the Republic of Jamaica, to whom specific executive powers may be granted. And this is separate from the office of Prime Minister as the political head of government of the Republic of Jamaica. Madam Speaker, we have deliberated on presidential selection of the President via nomination by the Prime Minister after consultation with the Leader of the Opposition, confirmed by the affirmative resolution of the Parliament, with both houses sitting together, and what we had decided on was a vote of 2/3 majority of all members. Fifthly, Madam Speaker, we have, Mr. Speaker, you know, under Jamaican law, one gender includes the other. But it would be the male gender including the female. It should be the other way around, since she has he in it and female has male in it. But, Mr. Speaker, I should underscore that an important part of the work of the CRC is to help to build consensus where it is required, where it has eroded, or where it is non-existent. So far, the deliberations have taken place in an atmosphere of respect for all voices and views. In arriving at consensus, Mr. Speaker, we not only focus on the recommendation itself, but also on the reason for making it. Having said that, I note a statement put out in the press by the PNP opposition under the caption, "Opposition and government differ on how appointment of the Jamaican president should be decided." It's a report that I have seen.
Mr. Speaker, on a point of order, I just want to clarify that this is inaccurate and would mislead the House if it's allowed to stand. The release of the party, of the PNP, to which the Minister refers, was not headed "Opposition and government differ on how appointment of the Jamaican president should be decided." That was the headline put in place by the particular news house that carried it. Okay. The statement was headed "PNP states position of the appointment of the President as head of state for the Republic of Jamaica." That is what it said. Right. So what has been said here suggests that we issued a statement under this caption is false and wrong. And I'd ask that the Minister correct that, please.
Mr. Speaker, I do not intend to make this contentious, and I'm happy for the clarification that the Leader of the Opposition has put out. I think we all know that media houses will put their own headline. But that being said, I think substantially what I am highlighting doesn't change, but I can understand how attributing a headline that is not what you had intended to put your statement out of can cause a little angst. Right. Right. So just to say, to repeat, Mr. Speaker, that so far the deliberations of the CRC have taken place in an atmosphere of respect for all voices and views. In arriving at consensus, we not only focus on the recommendation itself, but also on the reason for making it. And I have to say that the members nominated by the Leader of the Opposition have been constructive voices in the deliberation. And so, Madam Speaker, which is why I have referred to the statement that was put out. I've noted the clarification that the Leader of the Opposition has asked for. But by way of updating the House, at last week's meeting of the CRC, the issue of presidential selection was deliberated upon, with a recommendation of the Joint Select Committee on Constitutional and Electoral Reform that the President should be nominated by the Prime Minister after consultation with the Leader of the Opposition, and then for parliamentary confirmation of the two houses of Parliament sitting jointly as the point on which to build on. The primary question was about how the vote should be taken. The view put forward by the opposition in what came out in the press is different from the view put forward by the opposition through its members on the committee. And I say that it is regretful, to put it mildly, that an opportunity was not utilized. You know, that it wasn't seen fit to utilize the medium of the CRC through the nominees to express any other view that the opposition wished to be considered on how the vote should be taken in the proposed parliamentary confirmation process for the President of the Republic. And I say, bear in mind that the work of the CRC involves building consensus. I really hope that it is not beyond us here in the Parliament to demonstrate that we are prepared to use agreed mechanism. And just to say, I have been listening to the conversations on the issue, and it struck me, something struck me, that there is an opposition position on the matter and there is a government position. I listened to former Prime Minister Golding in a media exchange today indicating that the position put forward by the now opposition was a position pressed by the then JLP opposition, and the position now being put forward by no Jamaica Labour Party government, though it is not a position of the government, it is a position of the committee, was put forward by the then government. And I had to smile because it really struck me that some positions are going to be opposition positions and some positions are going to reflect a government perspective. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, what we recognize in this work is that sides will change, you know, and we will make a grave mistake if we come to the issue thinking that government will always be in government, meaning the party forming government or the party forming opposition will always be in opposition. This is a democracy. People express their votes. And so at the end of the day, what we want is a process that will yield a result without contention, because the proposed office of President of the Republic of Jamaica is an office in which national trust and confidence should repose, and the holder of the office should enjoy not only bipartisan support, but national support. So I say that to say it is regretful that the medium of the CRC was not utilized to state the position. If it were a case where there is another thinking that should have been brought to the committee's attention, and it was so brought, and it was not aired in full or come away with a different thing, I could understand a statement going public. So I'm really using this medium to urge a different approach, because we have to signal unity to the nation. Otherwise, we will go through the work and end in the same way previous committees and commissions have ended, the major thing not being implemented. I know we have to work to build consensus on other issues that are so thorny right now. If we were to start with them, we would never get moving on the work. So my plea is, let us utilize this mechanism of the CRC that aims to build consensus, that deliberates in a respectful way where all voices and views are heard, and that the views of the public are also taken into account, the experience of members. This signaling so early in the stage is really not helpful at all, really not helpful. Madam Speaker, we have been talking about Jamaicanizing the Constitution, and many have been wondering what exactly we mean. Let me just say, at the simplest, it means that we're seeking to have the constitutional instrument passed by the Parliament of Jamaica, because the current constitution was passed by executive action at Buckingham Palace. I can only borrow the words of our national constitutional law expert, Dr. Lloyd Bartlett, who sits on the committee, when he said that this is an opportunity for Jamaicans to be involved in the process, to assert our existence as a people and nation by claiming Jamaica as our own, by passing a constitution made in Jamaica and approved by Jamaicans. Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, aside from some challenges within the supporting secretariat, and in particular, getting the transcripts of the meeting available in a timely way, I'm pleased to report to the Honourable House that the work of the CRC is otherwise making good progress. The recommendations are informed by the views of the people, but they will also go back to the people for their further input and ownership. We have adopted a teach and learn approach. While we educate and inform the people about their constitution and the proposed changes, we listen to and learn from them about what they want. This is the only time that the people will directly vote to pass a law. The only time on those matters that the Constitution itself says that the people must approve the bill. And so I add that comments may be received by email for those who choose that medium. Constitutional reform at MLCA, that's Ministry Legal Constitutional Affairs. Constitutional reform at mlca.gov.jm. It is also our intention to travel to the nooks and crannies of Jamaica to hear from and engage with the people. The schedule of engagement will be made public in due course. Mr. Speaker, a new journey has begun, and it has begun in earnest. I renew my commitment to provide periodic updates to this Honourable House and the people of Jamaica on the deliverables of the CRC. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, let me thank the Minister for updating the House on proceedings in the CRC so far. I think it's a useful device, particularly in the light of the fact that the public at large hears and views and understands what's happening within the committee after the fact. There is at the moment, as my understanding, that there's no real-time engagement of the CRC, and some members of the public have complained about that and asked whether there can be real-time deliberations. Madam Speaker, I raise that point because unless we go to that real-time proceedings or procedure, there are some risks involved. There are some risk of recalls and for understandings. This is compounded by the fact that, as the Minister mentioned, she mentioned some secretarial challenges, and I want to say that those secretarial challenges have so far, and we are hopeful that the improvement will come, that so far there is no accurate day-to-day written record of the proceedings so far. Let me also make the point that insofar as the decision-making has gone, the opposition is on record of supporting a consensus approach to the decision-making. The environment that has been created has been one that has allowed for exchanges. But I will say that on some critical issues, there are some issues still of some conceptual issues that still has to be addressed. There are some linked issues that, unless those linkages are resolved, you really can pronounce on some prior issues. Let me give you a good example. A good example is the matter of the role for the diaspora. That's a matter that has come up, and there have been differing views expressed. That discussion is a discussion to be continued, and is continuing. The minister said a while ago that there is consensus that there is 13.8. What you mentioned something or not? Yeah, could you just? I thought I understood that there was.
No, I indicated that the provision of the Constitution about the composition of the Senate is one of the provisions that require a referendum to change. I didn't say that any consensus has been reached, because we haven't discussed that yet. Right. No, but it's in the statement there. Even if you misheard, it is in the statement.
Unfortunately, I didn't get this. I didn't have a time to read it. I was speaking.
Look at page 2.
I didn't have time to read it.
Understood,
I was speaking.
But no, I couldn't announce something that there's no consensus.
I'm glad for the clarity, because I misheard. I think I hadn't read it because I was speaking, and I ran outside briefly. But what it emphasizes, therefore, is the real necessity of having recordings live, and to ensure that all that is said is captured, because yeah, well, and therefore the recall mechanism is important, because on the question, take the question of the presidency, I'm very clear that there's consensus on the need for a president. A president. No, but you mentioned it. You mentioned it here, and in a way that invites, I have to comment. So, my point in commenting, I simply say, there's much that we agree on, and there's consensus on. And there are some things to be agreed on. I can assert that for me, that we were innovating on the position was very clear. For example, we thought that it was fitting that for the appointment of a president, that the houses of parliament, none of them really meeting and voting, and meeting only for ceremonial purposes previously, that we add some substance to that gathering. What we argued vociferously about was a view about a majority, only a simple majority, and we said, no, that can't work. We then revert to the 2/3 majority. What I think is yet to be settled, is certainly in my mind, is that this 2/3 sitting the voting will take place separately. No. There are some rules, because even though if that is to be the case, there are rules. There are some matters to be settled around that, how that is to be achieved, and some of the rules relating to a joint sitting of that nature. So there's work. I'm clear in my mind there's detailed work to be done on that. But I also say that from a broad framework point of view, one of the positions urged is that even as we speak to the need to deal with deeply entrenched matters and that which is not deeply or otherwise entrenched, there has been caution urged that whatever we put to the public must make sense. It must be coherent, and it must be sensible, because half a loaf may not reflect what the full loaf is intended to be. And what is missing can become far more important than what is in. So we have said we need to be, there are some rules, but we need to be sensible about this, because at the end of the day, what we want is a yes vote and for there to be success in this. I'll make one more comment, and then I'll sit. So the issue of Jamaicanization of the process has come up, and we've discussed it. That has been clarified, and there is broad understanding. However, there's another construct that we have discussed and has been clearly put on the table for further discussion, and that's the whole process of issue of decolonization and what that means. And that, as some of us have indicated, is as potent a consideration as Jamaicanization, however defined. So I will agree that the environment has been created for constructive discussion. We aim to be constructive. However, there are some important issues that, and I've pointed it out in the committee, that the government's role and the opposition role are not like any other roles. We have agreed to and subjected ourselves to a process that tells us that we are listening to other voices and other views. But at the end of the day, these two entities have some special role and contribution to make. And we come to that fully aware that this process is an evolving one, and there are some things we'll agree on, but there are some other things that must be agreed to ensure that what we've agreed on makes sense. I thank you.
Mr. Speaker, constitutional reform is quintessentially something that can only proceed if there is consensus. The structure of our Constitution necessitates that because there are many provisions in it which cannot be changed, cannot be reformed, unless it has the support of the government and the opposition. Furthermore, those things which not only require a parliamentary consensus, but an affirmative vote by the people in a referendum, of necessity would be assisted by there being consensus between the government and the opposition on those things. Absent such consensus, it would become very difficult for a referendum to proceed in a way which would be consistent with the idea of Jamaica moving forward together with a common sense of direction on this matter. The Minister has come here today to make a statement. In her written text, though she didn't say it orally, there is this comment. It is regretful, to put it mildly, that the leader of the opposition did not see it fit to utilize the medium of the CRC through his nominees to express any other view he wished to be considered on how the vote should be taken. The statement, which was issued to the media by the party, was a statement issued under the hand, so to speak, of the two members of our two representatives on the committee. It wasn't a statement issued by me. I saw the statement, and I agreed with the statement, but it wasn't my statement. It was a statement of our two members. And it was necessitated because at the press conference held late last week, it was put out into the public domain that there was an agreed position in relation to a very fundamental issue, which is how the president is to be approved by Parliament, the choice of president. Now, we believe that any president must be somebody who has bipartisan support and the support of the wider public. That is fundamental because the role of the president includes being involved in making appointments to numerous sensitive posts. And that can often be contentious. And therefore, a president who has the support, the trust and confidence of the government and the opposition is very important. And the selection process must ensure that that is so. I think that is in the best interest of Jamaica. For us, the only way to achieve that is to ensure that the mechanism that exists in the Constitution that would prevent a resolution or a piece of legislation passing unless it has bipartisan support be employed. And that mechanism is that there should be a two-thirds majority in both houses. The structure of our Constitution is that no government has a two-thirds majority in the Senate. No government, whatever side forms the government at a particular point in time. And that is a very critical mechanism for ensuring consensus around certain important amendments to the Constitution, and in this instance, the appointment and approval of the President. The fact that the law says that the Prime Minister can appoint somebody having consulted with the Leader of the Opposition does not ensure consensus. There are instances, which I don't want to get into the specifics about necessarily now, but there are instances where persons have been reappointed or appointed despite vociferous and reasoned objections by the Leader of the Opposition in relation to those appointments, arising from that consultation. So the mere fact of consultation doesn't assure consensus. The only thing that will assure consensus is a mechanism in the voting process that says that is designed to achieve consensus, and that will inform the minds of those who are the ones making the decisions that need to be approved in Parliament. In other words, the Prime Minister of the day and the Leader of the Opposition of the day. Knowing that consensus is required for parliamentary approval, it ensures that the Prime Minister of the day and the Leader of the Opposition of the day will arrive at consensus before it gets into Parliament. And that is why, for us, it is fundamental that a government, whether it be a JLP government or a PNP government, with a large enough majority in the lower house, cannot have their way unilaterally in deciding who the president is if the minority in the Parliament, the opposition of the day, do not agree or accept that person. And so that is a fundamental issue for us. Another fundamental issue for us is that we want full decolonization now. This process of constitutional reform must embrace not only the monarch of England ceasing to be our head of state and having a Jamaican head of state, but the monarch's court in London ceasing to be our final court of appeal. In fact, the latter issue is of more practical importance because it affects access to justice for the Jamaican people who cannot currently access the court in England because of financial constraints or because, in the case they want to go there to see their cases being heard in the appeal, they may need a visa, which they don't have a right to, and is at the discretion or whim, so to speak, of the consular officers who adjudicate these things in the UK bureaucracy. So that, for us, is also a fundamental issue. I know that the minister has a particular timing in mind for moving forward. But I must say right here that unless and until we form agreement around these fundamental things, haste will only make waste. Haste will only make waste. Let us take the time to reach a consensus. Let us ensure the public as a whole understands what is going on. Thus far, the public has not been privy to the deliberations of the committee other than through the recent report in a press conference. And there is a lot of talk, consternation even, about the direction that the political class is taking this reform without the people's involvement. Part of the challenge with that, I believe, is that the historical road that was taken to bring us to this point isn't fully understood, even though it has been said in this Parliament before. But this is the culmination of a process involving bipartisan discussions and consensus building, which had been taking place from the 1990s. So that is where we're at now. There are certain agreed issues which has taken 2 to 3 decades to arrive at consensus. One issue which was not settled was the question of how the voting should take place on the presidency. We are in favor of doing it in a joint sitting. We have no problem with that. But the voting must preserve the need for consensus. And a 2/3 majority of the House sitting together, of the 84 persons, of which 2/3 is 56 persons, MPs and senators sitting together, is not a threshold which we would agree is sufficient for consensus. As it stands today, the government would be able to choose its own president without our consent to it. And who knows in the future what majorities particular governments may have. Let us agree. And the minister reported what Bruce Golding apparently said. I didn't hear it. But the reality is that the only mechanism on the table for ensuring consensus is a voting system that will not allow a matter to go through without consensus. And any other system which doesn't have that in it, to my view, is naive. And we won't support a naive approach to this issue. We want an approach that ensures consensus, because that's what Jamaica deserves, and that's what is in the best interest of our country. So, Madam Speaker, I would just ask the Minister, going forward, you didn't have to come here and make a statement saying this, about how regretful it is that the leader of the opposition did not see fit to utilize the medium, the CRC. The release wasn't the leader of the opposition's release. It was a release by our representatives on that committee, and they felt it was necessary, and I agreed with them, because it had been put in the public domain in a press conference to the end of last week, that there was a particular agreed position, and our party doesn't support that position, and we felt it necessary to say so publicly. So that is why we are where we are. Now, we can continue to bicker about this in public. This is the first time I'm saying anything publicly on this issue. I'm only doing it because it was raised in here by the minister. I recognize the need for consensus as an ideal, but there is only one way of achieving it. And disrespect and hominem attacks are not going to achieve it. We must be very mindful that if this process gets politicized, it is going to be fraught with problems. And the comments about suggesting that there's some political advantage to be derived from this on either side is not going to be helpful. Because, as you know, we are in a competitive political environment. So let us calm that down. And if we would have said nothing on this matter had it not been put in the public domain, and had that not triggered a need to clarify it publicly. That is why that release went out. So, Madam Speaker, I would just say, let us try to restore a process of mutual respect, a process that seeks to achieve consensus, and let us be realistic around what that necessitates. Because if we're not, we will not achieve that desired objective. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, I have two comments. Yeah, man, I'll get to the questions. I will get to the questions. Madam Speaker, for any of these changes, it requires a referendum. In an environment where there is very little interest in all of these discussions, there may be a minority of persons who, in the political directorate and others in academia, who have an interest. The vast majority of Jamaicans don't, because they're dealing with their everyday struggles. My first recommendation is that the sittings of the Constitutional Reform Committee should be made public. In the same way that all committee meetings of Parliament are public, or everything that we do here is public. This is, I don't want to say a once in a generational type activity, but it is close to that. And if you want to generate public interest in the discussions, I believe the committee should open up itself beyond having post-press conferences and media interviews, so that the public can be privy to the discussions, the conclusions, and the recommendations. That's my first recommendation. My second question, again a process question, I would like to know where the process of public consultation and education will come in. I thought in the statement we would have heard something indicating what that process would be, when the first set of, whether they're going to be town hall meetings, whatever. I'd like to know what that process is. We run a real danger without that, or knowledge of that, of having a very, very low turnout in a referendum, whether it is done on its own or whether it is done within the political cycle of a local or general election. And we may defeat our own objectives of needing a majority to pass, to make the kind of changes. So I'd like to know where we are with public education and information and what that process is.
Madam Speaker, I can only say that absolutely no disrespect was meant. While I was speaking, a point of order was made and taken. Having heard the point of order, I modified what I had written to take into account the point of order. I accepted the explanation given. I don't know, it was my hope that that would be enough evidence that no disrespect is meant. I'm simply reiterating, we have a mechanism, both sides are present, let's utilize it before we go to public. But then I can understand, given the recommendation that the committee should open up itself, well, the committee did not really close itself down. So it's a recommendation that can be taken and discussed within the committee. I appreciate that people want to know, and many times suspicion arises because of ignorance. There is really nothing to hide. And on the issue of the importance of us arriving at consensus, bear in mind that the bill would have to be passed by both houses of Parliament first. And as has been said, even if the party forming government has the majority, as this one does, constitutionally you don't have the majority for 2/3 vote in the House. And if the bill is not passed in the Parliament, as the Constitution requires it to be passed, there will be nothing to go to the people. Nothing. So there is no preaching that needs to take place, because that is understood. It is also understood that the opposition and the government are passionate about certain issues. It has never been a secret. I think the member for St. Andrew Weston, who sits on the committee, perhaps spoke prose-like, but he has not been shy in making the views of the parliamentary opposition clear. I think perhaps he has been uncharacteristically clear in what he has put out there about the issues that he is hoping we will arrive at some consensus on. He has never been shy to do it. He has never done it in a shy way. So I just say, To answer the question about the process of public consultation, we are at that point now. At tomorrow's meeting, there is a public engagement and communication subcommittee that has been formed. And the subcommittee is looking at the schedule of engagement that needs to be done. And they're doing consultation. It will cover not just media engagement, but meetings. We bear in mind that the referendum will be held similarly to how a general election is held. And so we have an idea how you'd have to message, micro-message, to ensure that everybody knows and their input is had. So we're working that out, and it will become available. Already, some meetings have been held. And the proposal is also to take the work and the meeting of the committee across the island, at least in each of the counties. So there is no secret. I fully appreciate people wanting to know. Bear in mind, though, that it may not be helpful to start deliberations in the public just like that when you're working out a mechanism. So we're looking on recommendations already made, a vast body of work. We're considering whether, with the passage of time, there is anything new that needs to take place. Constitutional reform work is complex, so that deliberating outside of the public glare doesn't mean it is secretive. It is a way to make it as constructive as possible. And then we go to say, here is what, having looked at the recommendations that we're working on, here is what we're recommending to put out. So far, the issues on which the consensus has been reached, these are not secret issues at all. It's really the overarching goal of the reform. There are other things that it may be more helpful from day one to have the deliberation publicly. But the call for putting everything in the public glare at once may not always be the most productive way of dealing with it. And it doesn't equate to being secretive. It doesn't equate to hiding. You know, I think there is still a place for behind the scene as there is a place for on center stage. But all Jamaicans and parliamentarians can be assured that there can be nothing secretive in the work of the Constitutional Reform Committee. There can be nothing secretive in the work to reform the Constitution, because this is the only time that the people themselves will have to vote directly to pass a law. So I will close by saying that, yes.
Do you have a budget for the public engagement and consultation and the different fora that you plan to have across the country?
We're working it out. We actually have a proposal from the GIS as one of the medium through which we will disseminate the information. But, you know, we get caught in the end of financial year, end of one financial year, start of the other financial year. So those are the administrative things that are being worked out. I think just about not only government, but even private sector usually have those transitions between one financial year and the next. And that is where we are in this juncture. But everything will be made public. I came to the Parliament from day one with a commitment to providing update, and on every occasion I have renewed the commitment. Nothing has changed. It's not just some of us that are listening to the concerns. I certainly have a duty as the chair and a minister with responsibility to pay attention to the concerns raised. Because, Madam Speaker, if we cannot pass the bill in the Parliament, there will be nothing to go to the people. And I think that is enough for all of us who are concerned to take particular note of. If the Parliament can't agree on the bill, there will be no bill to go to the people, because the Constitution says that it only goes to the people after the Parliament has passed it. And the vote to be taken is a vote that will require both sides of the aisles. So I end by reiterating that there is nothing secret in the work being done. This is the people's work. The people will have to own the changes and vote to approve them. This is not government or opposition work alone, but somebody has to initiate the work. Somebody has to take charge of the work. Somebody has to direct the work. All right, it's just like somebody say, we want a meeting. Somebody has to take the decision. When will the meeting be held? Where will it be held? At what time will it start? How will you get people to the meeting? Somebody has to take responsibility for the work that would be involved in achieving the objective. This is the people's work. This is the people's work. Our democratic process yields a government at the end of it, and important responsibilities are entrusted to a government. Our democratic process speaks of a parliamentary opposition to which specific responsibilities are assigned. And this work involves the representatives of the people and the people themselves. So be assured, this is the people's work. There is no secret. There is nothing to hide.
Madam Minister. Announcements?
Laid on the table of the House today are the following. Ministry Paper number 36 of 2023 entitled Annual Report of the Firearms Licensing Authority for the period April 1, 2017 to March 31st, 2018, and the Annual Report of the Firearm Licensing Authority for the period April 1, 2017 to March 31, 2018. Ministry Paper number 37 of 2023 entitled Annual Report of the Firearm Licenses Authority for the period April 1, 2018 to March 31st, 2019, and the Annual Report of the Firearm Licensing Authority for the period April 1, 2018 to March 31, 2019. Annual Report on Audited Financial Statements of the National Housing Trust for the period April 1, 2021 to March 31, 2022. Annual Report and Statements of Account of the Bank of Jamaica for the year ended December 31, 2022. Annual Report of the Export-Import Bank of Jamaica for the financial year 2021-2022, and the Civil Service Establishment General Order 2023 and its resolution under the Civil Service Establishment Act.
Bills brought from the Senate.
The following is a message from the President of the Senate. To the Honorable House of Representatives, I have the honor to advise the Honorable House of Representatives that on the 31st day of March 2023, the following bills entitled An Act to Amend the Companies Act for Connected Matters, an Act to amend the Electronic Transaction Act and to provide for connected matters, and an Act to amend the Financial Administration and Audit Act and to provide for connected matters, were passed in the Senate without amendments. Signed, Thomas Tavares Swinson, OJCD, KCJP, President of the Senate.
Petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I'll move the following motion. The Trademarks Act, the Trademarks Amendment Rules 2022 Resolution, whereas Section 78 of the Trademarks Act, hereinafter referred to as the Act, provides that the Minister may from time to time make such rules subject to affirmative resolution. A, for regulating the practice under the Act, including the service of documents. B, for classifying goods for the purposes of registration of trademarks. C, for making or requiring duplicates of trademarks and other documents. D, for securing and regulating the publishing and selling or distributing in such a manner as he may think fit of copies of trademarks and other documents. E, for the regulation of trademark agents. F, prescribing fees payable under this Act. G, generally for regulating the business of the Office of the Registrar of Companies in relation to trademarks and all things by this Act placed under the direction or control of the Registrar. And whereas on the 15th day of December 2022, the Minister made the Trademarks Amendment Rules 2022, now therefore be it resolved by this Honourable House as follows. 1. This resolution may be cited as the Trademarks Amendment Rules 2022 resolution. 2. The Trademarks Amendment Rules 2022, which was laid on the table of the House on the 18th day of April 2023, is affirmed. And Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice at the next meeting of the House. I'll also move the following motion. The Civil Service Establishment Act, the Civil Service Establishment General Order 2023 Resolution. Whereas Section 3, Subsection 1 of the Civil Service Establishment Act, hereinafter referred to as the Act, provides that, subject to the provisions of the Constitution of Jamaica relating to the holders of public offices and of the Act, the Minister may, by order, constitute or abolish offices in the public service. And whereas Section 3, Subsection 2 of the Act provides that an order made under Section 3 of the Act may from time to time, A, determine the numbers of any office specified thereunder, B, determine the emoluments to be attached to any office, and C, make such incidental, consequential, and supplemental provisions as the Minister thinks necessary or expedient to give full effect to the order. And whereas Section 3, Subsection 3 of the Act provides that an order under Section 3 of the Act may provide that it shall have effect from such date not earlier than the 1st day of February 1976, and as may be specified therein. And whereas Section 3, Subsection 4 of the Act provides that an order made under Section 3 of the Act shall be subject to affirmative resolution of the House of Representatives. And whereas on the 1st day of March 2023, the Minister made the Civil Service Establishment General Order 2023. Now therefore be it resolved by this Honourable House as follows. This resolution may be cited as the Civil Service Establishment General Order 2023 Resolution, and 2, the Civil Service Establishment General Order 2023, which was laid on the table of the House on the 18th day of April 2023, is affirmed. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I propose to take these tomorrow.
Motions relating to sittings of the House, motions for leave to introduce bills, presentation of bills without leave of the House, first obtained. And public business.
Madam Speaker, it is not intended to do any further business for the day. I therefore invite you to adjourn this Honourable House until tomorrow, April 19th at 2 p.m. at the George William Gordon House. May it please you, Madam Speaker. Tomorrow's meeting, Madam Speaker, will focus on the two motions which the Minister of Finance gave today and a statement by the Minister of Labour and Social Security. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Members, the question before the House is that we do adjourn until tomorrow, Wednesday, the 19th of April.
Madam Speaker, I crave your indulgence to just inform the House further on this motion of adjournment that the ZOSOs will also be taken tomorrow. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Members, the question before the House is that we do adjourn until tomorrow, Wednesday, the 19th of April, when we will look at the two motions that were taken by the Minister this evening and also the ZOSO by the Minister of National Security. Those in favor? Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. This House is now adjourned.